Call our work session, briefing session to order. First order of business tonight will be number 1, which is discuss the agenda items. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council tonight on your agenda, on the consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes for the July 26th special City Council meeting, the July 28th special City Council meeting, the August 2nd regular council meeting, and the August 5th council budget workshop.
And I have 2 changes that have been requested on that. On the second page, fourth paragraph down, about 4 lines from the bottom, it just said direct rather than director, and that's been corrected. And then also in the very last paragraph on page 2, instead of just Hill City, the word bridge was added after Hill City.
Okay, did y'all get those corrections?
Item 4B is a resolution authorizing the annual procurement of tree maintenance services with Shawnee Mission Tree Service, DBA Arbor Masters Tree Service. And this is through a City of Grapevine cooperative purchasing agreement. The original contract was a term of 12 months, and then there were 4 one-year renewals. This is the last of the annual renewals. The City of Grapevine had reapproved that contract, so it is a valid contract. The amount is approximately $98,000, and we do have that funding in the general fund and the drainage fund. The next item is a resolution exercising the second of 2 one-year renewal options for professional investment advisory services with Valley View Consulting. This is the second of 2 one-year renewals. Valley View acts as our consultant our investment consultant. They are regulated by the SEC, and they assist us in developing cash flow projections and suggesting appropriate investment strategies for our investment pool. Their cost is based on the portfolio value, and it's 8 basis points, 0.08% basis points, and so it's an estimated cost of $11,670 annually. The next item, 4D, is authorizing a 3-year contract for billing and collection of EMS services with PST Services. The contract is a 3-year contract with one-year renewal. The estimated cost of the 3-year contract is $148,055 or $49,352 annually, and that amount has been budgeted. PST is a subsidiary of McKesson, and McKesson was formerly Med 3000, which is the same company that we had the last couple of years. So they will handle all of the billing for EMS services.
Can I ask a question on that? In the past, there's been some difficulties in the hospital talking to them or when our EMS brings a patient to the hospital. I was wondering if that got resolved so that we get the billing. Yes.
They have a database, so instead of sending all these letters to the individual patient, they have a database that all goes back and forth. Once you're in the database, it's pretty good. We do have some hiccups though. They'll try to get it because people move and numbers change to get transversed. But as far as I know, that's a whole lot better. We changed a few programming things. With the new company we're going to, they should resolve all of it. We're going to a new PCR company. The problems came from the PCR end of it to them. They send them very limited information.
PCR?
The PCR company, so we're going from
PCR.
Patient care reports. So we have one company that does patient care reports, and then a billing company. It's all one-stop shopping. So with this agreement with them, they actually pay the PCR, the patient care reporting employees. We're going to a whole new patient care reporting, and that should resolve any of those issues. I won't say all of them, but most of
So
them.
the PCR is not a part of the other company?
Most places have a patient care reporting company, and then an interim, and then a billing company. And McKesson does all of that together under one percentage that we pay. Like Cedar Hill, they do their own hardware. but they do all the other parts of it. They actually, McKesson does hardware, PCR, billing, everything, all in one big, it cuts down a lot of headaches for me and everybody else.
So this has proved to be a better,
It's the same company that we've had a really good relationship
it
with.
was a big problem.
What's that, them communicating with them?
Before.
Yeah. This should fix over 90% of those problems with the new PCR company. The other PCR company, Dallas was using them, Cedar Hill was using them, we were using them, DeSoto was using them, and Dallas dropped them. We're dropping them, DeSoto dropped them, Cedar Hill's already dropped them too. So, and we're all going to the same patient care reporting company, so things will be much better.
The next item, 4E, is a resolution awarding bid number 1FB1619 to Durable Specialties, and this is for the traffic signal light at North Duncanville Road and Westward Redbird Lane. It is an amount of $176,600.
Can I hear a hoorah?
I know you've been waiting for that.
Oh, that's that place we get the light. Yeah, I remember that.
We have them everywhere and we can't get one there.
The next item, 4F, is a resolution approving the amendment number 4 to the Dallas County Household Hazardous Waste Interlocal Agreement. The original contract was approved in 2012, and this is now amendment number 4 for FY 16-17. This agreement runs from October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, and what it does is it allows our residents to utilize the chemical collection center in Dallas on Plano Road, and also allows for the spring and fall community collection events, one that's held at Southwest Center Mall, and then the other one that's held at Duncanville High School softball parking lot. And those funds are budgeted in the solid waste budget for that expenditure. Item 4G is a resolution amending Resolution 2015-02-0328, and this is to increase the number of positions to the Senior Advocacy Commission. The Senior Advocacy Commission met last Thursday, and I know when we met last week, we weren't sure if they were going to recommend 7 or 9. They have opted to recommend 9 members, so that is what is coming forward as their recommendation to you. The resolution does not specify a number, so I think that's up to you, when you make that motion, or you may want to specify that number of 9 members.
And then you will recall that we ranked them, we chose what, 4 and ranked them. Now, we've had one resignation on the multicultural committee, and so, and we've arranged Hood Jack, and we were supposed to, there was one lost application, and it was for Helen Peralta, and she wanted to be on the multicultural commission. I think she would probably be good personally, but that's up to the council.
Mayor Green, if you want to, since if council wants to make a suggestion, either 9 or 7, if you would read that into the record, have Mary read either 9 or 7, you could put it on consent, otherwise you might need to pull it off so that you can talk about.
Well, what are y'all thinking? You know, we can't vote on anything, but are y'all thinking 7 or 9?
9.
Okay, I think I see lots of good 9 thoughts there, so people would go that route.
At least 54. So Mary, if when you read that in, read in 9 on that item, and you can vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that is all the items on the consent agenda. On the items for individual consideration, we have the public hearing on the proposed tax rate. Richard will do a presentation, brief presentation on the tax rate, the general fund part of the budget. We won't cover the other parts of the budget since this item tonight is only on the tax rate. We will do that at the next city council meeting where we will cover the other funds, but we will talk about the general fund tonight since that's related to the tax rate. The second item, item 5B, is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 16A, sign guidelines. This is the one that we talked with you about last meeting in a briefing session, discussion about limiting the banner signs, reducing the numbers of permits for that. Item 5C.
I'm gonna make an amendment, that to exclude attaching it to exterior walls to exclude places of worship.
What was the second one, I'm sorry?
To exclude places of worship for it to be attached to the exterior wall. Because there's some churches that set off from the road, you can't see, like Vacation Bible School signs, you'll be able to see those if they're attached to the wall. That's
So
just-
allowing churches then to use a freestanding sign.
Yeah.
With the time period.
So not churches, places of worship.
Places of worship, okay, but yeah, at the time period, the same, still the same
Yeah, I think
number,
so, unless
limitation.
someone else
Okay, so
thinks
that would be the
differently.
only change.
Yeah, well, and the other one, the first one you mentioned was you mentioned the churches, you exempt the churches from putting it on the wall. What was the other one?
That was it, just having,
Oh,
allowing a
okay.
freestanding sign.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if we have to tell them where they can put it. Obviously, they know they can't put it in the right of way.
We may have to tell them that, because there's a place up there on Cedar Ridge that, it's always in the right of ways.
But there,
Would it-
you might have some issues. There's a case called Reed versus Town of Gilbert. And that case was decided by the United States Supreme Court in June 2015. And that case stands for the proposition that if a city or a regulating body makes a distinction between a sign based on the type of sign that it is, that it might lead to a content regulation. So if you were to treat signs of places of worship different than a commercial sign, there's an equal protection argument, and then the court says then you've made a distinction based on the content of the
Okay,
sign.
and I agree with that. And so, I'll pull mine, no, not, okay. What you could do, and we don't have time to write the ordinance now, but what we could do is say if you have if your business is located a certain amount of feet from the road, then you can have a freestanding sign.
Well, we
But
can,
I don't know that we can do that right now.
we can, I think what we can do is go ahead and adopt the ordinance tonight, and then we can always run it back through sign
We can make a
control
change.
and make a change on it.
And that would also give us an opportunity to see if we run into any issues. Okay. The next item is 5C, is an ordinance amending Chapter 1 by adding a new Division 3, and this is park and facility naming. And as we told you before, we did not have an ordinance in place for naming of park facilities and portions of parks, so this ordinance is a recommendation from the park board as far as setting some criteria for that. There's also a reserve section in that ordinance for if the council wishes to at some point adopt guidelines, either similar guidelines or additional guidelines for naming of other city facilities. That is reserved right now in there. But tonight, what's before you is the park board's recommendation. 5D is the appointments to the various boards and commissions. The mayor mentioned that on the Multicultural Commission. 5E is appointments of council members as liaisons to the boards and commissions. I think that's a volunteer.
Yeah, we don't have to, that's not something we have to cast in stone. We can just, at any meeting, we can, if you want to, just ask everybody to look at the list of board and commissions. If you want to keep it the same, we would like to have somebody serving on every board and commission. But that doesn't mean that we can't have more than one council person serving. But we'd like to get them all covered if we can. So that's not something that we're going to have to put in an ordinance. That's it. We just sign up for it. It can be changed that way during the year if you need to switch around.
So how are we gonna do that?
Do we even need this on the agenda?
You don't have to.
Do you want to pull this one from the agenda?
We forgot to talk about it last Wednesday. I had a note on the board, and I
Okay.
forgot when y'all were talking about this.
All right, we will pull that. We'll pull E from the agenda.
Is that something we could just email Mary, or do we need to do that in open session?
Well, I think we'll have time, since this is our last meeting.
Well, why would you need to do it in open session? It's just,
Well, if the council's making the appointment, he can only meet until he can be meeting posted in accordance with the meetings act.
But this is a volunteer deal. We've got council members and we're just gonna
If
divvy
it's just
it
a
up.
volunteer thing, then they can either mail them in or you can do it at a workshop.
Yeah,
But I can see as, when we do it together, we're not loading one, too many.
well, I would like for us to do it around the table so that we won't all choose one board or something like that, so. We can just get the list at our next meeting and say, hey, look at the list and sign up for what you think you can, be a council person representing, the council on that committee. And then it doesn't have to be put in ordinance form or anything else like that. And then that way, if for some reason you need to change, you can just say, hey, I can't do this one, but maybe I can do that one or something, without having it locked in an ordinance.
There's no reason to do a resolution ordinance.
No.
You may want to maybe do it announce maybe at your next workshop, who signed up for what.
Yeah, so
that's
if
right.
everybody then would just let Mary know what you want, what you prefer to volunteer for, she'll create the list and then we'll give you all the list and.
We've got some openings, maybe we can convince somebody to fill in there, so.
The current list is in the packet, so you can find those.
Okay.
They're
All right.
under there.
It would be helpful if when that list went out, they knew when those groups met.
It's on.
We
there.
have it, we have it typed and all that.
And then the last item on the agenda as 5F is a resolution approving the terms and conditions of an agreement with Dallas County. This is with Health and Human Services, and this is for mosquito ground control program for the next fiscal year, October 1 through September 30.
I think we can do a lot better job outside of that agreement through a private agreement. I think that what the county does is just throw it in the air and they're not targeting and they spray way more than they should, and I think they're overcharging Duncanville. I do know some cities, I read in the paper, you know, they'll put the poison on their backpack and send people down to the creek and do a spray. And I know that's not being done in Duncanville. And we have a lot of creeks in Duncanville. And I know that we have certain areas that they always have an issue, like on thrush. And if we had that, some professionals who do this, go in there and spray that area, I think we could get a handle on it. Instead of spraying, you know, a fourth of the city based on one area, we could just concentrate on that one area. That's what I think. And, you know, I'm not a pest control person. I need to pay attention.
Let me, you ask Secretary, talk a little bit about that since Mike, that's under your.
Well, Dallas County uses contractors now to do their spraying, so these are licensed professional pest control people that do it. We have the city divided up into 5 main quadrants, like all of the cities in Dallas County do. And if the trap is positive for West Nile, then they spray 3 nights to get a good kill. I have some questions about the jobs that I've seen some of the contractors doing. I've gotten reports of them driving too fast. I've gone out and seen them go down the street and not be able to detect hardly any pesticide in the air. So there are some questions about what these contractors are doing. We brought this to the attention of Dallas County. As far as the cost, I don't know what the going rate is right now with the private industry, what they charge. We get all our trapping, the lab work, everything's done as part of this contract. The only thing we're paying for on it is $185 an hour for the actual spraying that they do with the spray truck. If we ever did aerial spraying, then there'd be an extra charge for that, but we haven't done that this year. I don't know if that would be cheaper or not. I really don't know.
What I see in my neighborhood, because our lots are a quarter of an acre, they're deep. and I see the truck coming, I see the smoke going in the air and then kind of landing on the sidewalk. And nothing's getting, and there's a creek back there, and it's not even getting close to that
Right.
creek.
Well, that's when there's talk to go into aerial spraying in the future.
What about the
They're starting to
canopy?
looking at that, because then you get a lot better coverage, you get backyards, you get creek areas, you get down in the foliage. So that's something they're looking at for the future. But it's not something that has happened this year. There was talk of it, but it happened too late in the season, and all the cities couldn't get together with that.
So this is for the West Nile virus because they come out in the evening, is that true?
Well, they'll spray any of them at evening rather than in the daytime.
So what about the Zika virus, the mosquito that carries the Zika virus?
Well, they're more active in the daytime and the evening hours and morning hours, dusk and dawn. But they're now finding that in Brazil that Zika is carried also by the kulaks that we're spraying for West Nile at night. So there's just a lot more science, a lot more research coming out. They're looking at it. But it looks like the wave of the future is going to be aerial spraying.
So is your recommendation that we accept this?
I think it's a lot cheaper to go with Dallas County because you have all the cities going in together. They get a group rate with these aerial contractors. They do larvicides for us. They do the trapping. They do the lab test on the mosquitoes to determine if they have West Nile. If we did that all ourselves, or even through outside contractors, I think it would be a lot more expensive. But you just have to put a pencil to it and do the research.
Did we even contact any to find out?
No, we just renewing the contract that we had, but as Mike said, we did meet with them, and when was that, about a month ago? I think Greg, Mike and I met with Zach Thomas, talked through it. We
Well,
had some issues.
yeah, because we are hilly and creek, and I know the same thing is true on my street. In fact, I had kids that came in behind them and said, it was up there on the street. Of course, we have 3 layers down to the creek. They're not getting anywhere near it. And that's where that's where they are. So,
I would just wonder if we're expecting more service, if we can get a lower cost and expect them to cover more ground. I don't
yeah,
know.
I don't know about covering more ground, think about
being more
effectiveness.
effective. I know, that's what I was thinking. We need to be
Maybe less
effective.
ground, but
And I
still what
think
needs
if
it.
you're talking about trying to get back into those areas, and other than aerial spraying, then it's gonna be a lot more labor intensive, and so the cost will probably be more.
I would think though, like what Leslie was saying, if you could get, I don't know people walk with backpacks, but if that's what they do, walk with the sprayer, that would be a lot more effective to walk down in those areas, a lot more.
To do that, you have to get permission from each individual property owner to let you on there to spray, and most of them are not gonna let you do that. We did that for Zika with the one human case that we had, a travel-related case. We did 25 houses in the neighborhood around the person's house. I only got about 9 people to agree to let us spray the exterior of their hedges and the exterior of their yard and to do thermal backpack spraying. The people would not agree to do it. And it's very expensive if you were to go and do that all over Duncanville. You have to get permission from everybody. You have to be wary of drift from one property line to another. And when you use those thermal foggers rather than a truck sprayer, you get a lot of drift. And it's a
What
lot
was
of
their
problems.
thinking about why they didn't want you to come on their property?
Because they don't want the spray. They don't want their house to be sprayed with chemicals for whatever reason.
And if they strongly believe that you're gonna upset some people very intensely.
Well, we don't use chemical and we don't spray our house, but if you're talking about,
It's a pyrethrin, right?
yeah.
And it's pretty good,
Well,
it does inert after.
There's
That's-
pyrethrins, and now they're talking about aerial spraying with organophosphates.
Yeah, if you'll remember when Dr. Jones was, his PhD is in chemistry, was on the council, he will tell you that it is absolutely safe
That was his,
But
that
you
it
wouldn't
was.
drink it.
Well, I wouldn't drink it.
Depends on what it is.
Yeah. Did you say it depends on what you mix it with?
Well, what I would suggest is maybe we go ahead with this contract right now, and we're already aware of the problems. And have a test period now to see if we can get it straightened out. If not, then we're gonna have to do something else. But, the aerial spray stuff is not too effective, is it, Mike?
Well, it is, it's effective, if not more effective than the truck spray. There's two different chemicals. There's an organophosphate, dibrome, and then there's permethrins, which is a product called Duet. The dibrome's much more effective for aerial spraying. It's a little more expensive. It's a heavier particle. It'll settle out through the canopy better, get better coverage, and has a little longer residual effect. Gets a better kill. But it's an organophosphate, and a lot of people do not want to do that. And the concentration that they use it at, CDC says it's perfectly safe. But it's not going to be as safe as Duet, which has the permethrin base, but it's not going to get as good a kill. So there's a controversy about the chemicals. There's a controversy of aerial spraying versus truck spraying. But the contract that we have right here, it's for truck spraying with permethrins and for the larviciding. But the biggest part of the contract, or a lot of it, is the fact that they do all of our trapping and testing. And that's labor intensive and expensive if you do all that yourself. You do that yourself, you have to send the mosquitoes to the state lab. You don't get your results back for several days. I did that in Irving, and I would not recommend doing it yourself. It's far cheaper to go with the Dallas County and the contract that they have than it would be to do it ourselves using our own contractors or our own people. There's a lot of maintenance involved in those sprayers. Every time you go out to spray, it seems like something goes wrong. So you've got to have backups, you've got to have mechanics that know how to work on those units, specialty type equipment.
Where are the mosquitoes? Thrush doesn't have a creek over there. So
Thrush does have a creek, and they've had 3 positive traps.
where's the creek?
It flows down to the park down there.
Park has one.
And it flows across over to Cockle Hill, and it comes back up through Fair Meadows. It's behind houses, so you never see it. But as where the mosquitoes over there are breeding and why they're positive, I don't know. There could be someone that has a flock of chickens or some birds that they're keeping. It could be a positive reservoir. We don't know. We haven't been able to pinpoint it.
The chickens not get it?
The chickens carry it, yeah, they can. Any bird, it's carried by birds, they're the host. Whereas in Zika, humans are the host. So there's a difference there. West Nile spread real quickly because it's spread by the birds. Zika is spreading real slowly because it's spread by humans.
I feel so good about this.
You've got more you want to know about.
I did. Don't ask if you don't want to know.
To give you a quick recap, East Little had 3 positives, Thrush had 3, Greenstone Court had 2, Highgate had 1, and Meadow Green had 0. So we've had 9 positive traps, and each time we had a positive trap, we sprayed that area 3 times. There was a couple of times there was some malfunctioning or weather-related problems, and we only sprayed 2 nights. But most of them got sprayed 3 nights, and there were 9 positive traps.
I would think going back to the county, it's economies of scale. Whenever you have a bunch of entities that put in together and do something, then the overall cost per entity is lost. I mean, it's lower. So,
I think we're thinking though in terms of effectiveness because we're so different, our topography with the hills and the creeks and the different layers, that we're not the same as someone who's all on the same level and maybe doesn't have all the issues we have with, I mean, that's why we live here, is because it's so beautiful, and but it also causes a problem.
well, I would agree, let's go with this and watch it closely, and if we need to do
What
something
we can do
different.
is we can work with the county, and if we've got, like Mike said, we monitor them, and we can have discussions with them as far as trying to make it more effective. And also during the year, we can also start doing some research on what other companies might be able to do it if we were to break away from the county. But as he said, we would probably also need to look at a contract for the testing as well as then a contract for the spraying. So, but we can look at that through the year and come back with cost comparisons.
Maybe you could encourage them to move to a different method.
Well,
Yeah.
there's talk to go into aerial spraying, which would get the areas you're talking about, but if you went in there with thermal foggers, they're not really backpack sprayers are for spraying residuals. If you go in there with individual walking down creeks with thermal foggers, you're talking about extremely labor intensive. It would be just, you couldn't afford it. It'd just be too expensive to do that. And it's hard to get to those areas. Just to go down there and inspect for larvae, it's really hard to get to a lot of those creeks and a lot of those places. Most of our creeks are fairly deep in places and they flow really well. It's this time of year when they get dried up that you start getting little stagnant areas that would breed mosquitoes. But as long as you've got a healthy minnow population, which most of our standing water areas do right now, you're not getting the larvae in the creek. You get them more in the standing water in the flower pots in people's backyards, kid pools and stuff like that. The creeks get blamed a lot, but it's not as much in the creeks.
Yes, we've out on a day. I haven't seen any. So I don't know if it's the county or.
Well, there's nothing that stops us from contracting with the county because of the complete service we get. And if we have some hot spots, we can consider hiring a contractor to go in and treat those hot spots. Foggers or whatever.
Yeah. Well, but what he said is true, and thought about it, and I know our creek is flowing. You can hear it.
And, you know, with the Zika virus, and now I read that the yellow fever is being spread by the same mosquitoes as the Zika virus, and it's a matter of time before it gets, you know, to over here. At what point is, for Duncanville, do we say, okay, you don't have a right to keep us from off your property because this is a public health issue? When do we get to that point?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
There's no guideline for that?
Well,
So who makes that decision?
I don't know.
I think it has to be an epidemic proportion.
What's an epidemic proportion?
So many people
say.
per 100,000.
And who makes that? Is that something written?
National,
They're-
Is it the CDC?
Disease Control in Atlanta would make that decision.
So
On a
one
regional
person,
basis.
so one person with Zika, and you're their neighbor, you can keep them off your property, but, and keep them from spraying.
I'm gonna spray him. If someone's got a disease, I guess you have the right to keep them off your property. Now,
No,
there's
no,
a
I'm talking about
spraying for it,
spraying on their property
Well,
when you're
no,
their
it's
neighbor.
old Fourth Amendment problem. There you go. The government is not entitled to come on your property unless you get a warrant. If we thought that there would have to be probable cause to believe that there are mosquitoes being bred on that property, it would require us to make that entry. And we'd get administrative warrant.
Yeah, when we aerial sprayed in 2012, we had to declare an emergency. The mayor had to do that for the city, the county did it, and the state did it, and that's when we did the aerial spraying.
It was a trickle down, the governor signed the order, and then I think we had a couple of meetings here in this room, emergency meetings that we passed.
And do you
Ms.
remember?
Jameson, I think you were on.
Yeah, and if you remember when we were in Washington, Eddie Bernice Johnson asked us if we needed funding for Zika. And at that time, we didn't know of any.
Well, have we, other than the one case that was brought into the country by the person, have we had any indication that we've got a bigger problem here?
No, we've had one positive case. In Dallas County, we've had 26 travel-related Zika cases, 12 pregnant women suspected of having Zika. 3 of those women actually have symptoms of having it. Now, we haven't had any babies born with birth defects yet.
That's good. You ever seen a Zika baby? It's bad. But I put out a thing on Zika here a while back, called city employees, and I actually had a police officer tell me that of a house with an above-ground pool that was just nasty. And he said, you know, so I went by there, I told them what was going on, and they gladly drained it. Or it could have filled up by now, some of the rain we've had over the last couple of years.
Well, I think it behooves us if we know of a pool in the neighborhood, report it. Because that's something the city can require action or send somebody out there to do it.
And they did,
Yes.
Yeah, and staff's been real nice, told them that, you know, Zika's here now, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't think about it. They gladly drained it.
Zika's not here in our mosquitoes now, it's not.
it's not the Duncanville mosquitoes?
It's not in any mosquitoes other than a few in Florida, and they're not even sure about
Yeah.
that.
It's brought in.
It's travel. Well, we're gonna get, we need to move on, we can't. Okay, that was the end of our items for individual consideration. Yeah, I guess we'll move in to executive session. Wait, discussion of a ordinance to regulate group home facilities in the city.
This item, you may recall it probably about a year ago, I think we briefed you on boarding homes and plans to revise the ordinance. Ran into some difficulties and it was getting very complicated, kind of dropped off the radar for a little while. We want to bring it back and we think we have a better way of approaching it. But we wanted to talk to y'all again about it since it's been a while. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chastity. She's much more familiar with this.
Thank you, Kevin. Mayor and Council, as Kevin mentioned, the last briefing that you all received was back in August of 2015, where staff presented a briefing session on the boarding home facilities. And at that time, there was discussion specifically related to creating an ordinance that would not only regulate the facilities themselves, but included inspection, an application process, an inspection checklist, and fees associated with that. And at that time, that ordinance defined boarding homes as places where more than two unrelated persons are provided lodging in a single-family residential home. And so, again, the ordinance essentially addressed some operating mechanisms within the boarding home facilities themselves, as well as the allowance of them. The previous ordinance that you all saw in 2015 removed the prohibition of more than two unrelated persons living together in a single family district. That is currently in our ordinance that essentially limits those living in a single family residential district to no more than two unrelated persons. So the previous proposed ordinance would remove that prohibition. It also included some regulations that were modeled after the state of Texas model standards for boarding homes, and still required zoning for group home facilities, which is under our current ordinance. Another point to bring up for the previous presentation, or previous ordinance that you all were considering, was that they included an inspection form, again, that was modeled after the state of Texas. But the requirements for that ordinance were very labor intensive and actually would have required staff likely outsourcing the inspection process, because it included everything from checking on the mental state of the residents and how they were being treated, interviewing them, making sure their finances were in order. That was far beyond the scope of what staff would be capable of doing. And then, of course, it also established a process, application process. And so after further review and consideration, staff and the city attorney, we looked at other ordinances that exist, as well as revisited the previously proposed ordinance, and discovered that the previous ordinance did not specify that those facilities had to be for persons with disabilities. So it opened it up to anyone could take a single family residential home and have more than two unrelated persons living there, and within the guidelines of that proposed ordinance. So it was essentially kind of creating an allowance that wasn't there previously. And so we looked at that, and we also looked at the...
I'm sorry, this is not making sense.
I'm sorry.
What do you mean?
In which way?
Before our, the previous ordinance,
The
it
previous-
did not specify that they were disabled?
Correct. The previous ordinance that you saw in 2015 did not specify that boarding homes had to be for people with disabilities.
Only?
Only, correct.
Okay.
They were a subset of that group, but it did not mean that they only, had to have disabilities. So it opened it up. You could open a boarding home facility that was for people without disabilities.
The group homes is a subset of boarding homes, and group homes are referred to people with disabilities. It can be various types of things. But they are regulated by the state, so they have regulations. But the broader piece of that, boarding homes were not regulated, are not regulated. And so what was happening was we were trying to figure out how to address that group.
So group homes means disabilities only,
Correct.
and those are regulated by state.
Correct.
And so boarding homes, can we stop those?
Yes.
And that's what we're.
That's
And
what
that's
we're-
what this is?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Got it.
Sorry about
Well, the
that.
approach we were taking before was not prohibiting them, but allowing them, but creating a whole set of rules and regulations that was putting a huge burden on us, and that was where we were trying to figure out how to make that happen then. Now we have a different way to approach it.
And we weren't stopping boarding homes.
It wouldn't have stopped them, but it would have made it very difficult for them to come in, but it was also very difficult on us.
So this will stop them.
I'll let her talk through
Yeah,
that.
essentially, yes. I mean, they would continue to be prohibited, so we would not open the ordinance to allow them.
And who is it that would go in and determine that it was in fact a boarding house?
Well, generally, currently, it's if there's a code complaint of, more than a certain number of people living together in a home, it's generally code enforcement. That's how we find out about most of them.
And what happens is it's the building official and the fire marshal that will look at that and make a determination by inspecting the home.
And you can just walk up to the door and,
No.
Well, you can ask, they can voluntarily answer questions, and I think we had a recent one that Greg had voluntary answers. If they refuse, then we would have to get a warrant to inspect. So you gotta go through the court process through the judge to demonstrate cause and get a warrant to go in.
So it's a boarding home with more than two unrelated people live there?
By definition under our ordinance.
when you have real estate that has got.
There's gotta be some. One of the problems that you run into is, why is it against the law for me and someone else to live in a house even though we're not renting? And you get into that family thing. These are for where people are renting for a fee to people, so you're creating, there's definition. So it's not just two people that are not related to one living there, but it's
For the
fee
fee.
arrangement and renting by the room, by the bedroom. There's a difference between the definition of boarding house.
So if you have 4 kids living in the house and they're dividing everything up 4 ways, that's okay.
Well, it all depends what the arrangement is. If it's a sorority or frat house, which is a big house, renting by the bedroom is boarding home.
Yeah.
Sorority
You
house
can
is
tell, you can tell because they have all these cars and
So
they're
we
coming and going.
We want to be careful in the definition
We get 3 calls.
to make sure that we're not running afoul of
If they're
constitutional
yours.
prohibitions.
Are they your 3 cars?
Freedom of association.
3 that are living together?
College Station.
They call it, the kids live
It's a
together.
boarding home
Okay.
unless,
Unless it's,
it's like you can't run a business from your home. But if someone's giving voice lessons or piano lessons, they're not really bothering anybody, no one, you know what I'm saying? So, to me, that's what it is.
College kids, they would get a place and they'd all share the same kitchen and,
yeah.
Yeah.
maybe 2 of them in a bedroom or whatever. You're not renting by a bedroom.
No, you wouldn't even probably notice. You notice on boarding.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, because we've had them in the neighborhood, and they have a lot of cars and coming and going and different people, and, it's like a hotel.
So staff proposes instead of allowing the boarding homes with specific inspection process and review, we propose to continue to prohibit them, but of course still allowing group homes. And again, the group home definition is provided there: housing occupied by groups of unrelated individuals with disabilities living in the homes and are licensed by the state. And that's because our current zoning ordinance actually requires a special use permit for group homes. And so there are no specific guidelines in the ordinance as it relates to number of residents or distance from other facilities or any other proportionality standards. And so staff does propose to place some of those standards in an ordinance, as well as making it more of an administrative process, which would allow for, if it's again defined as a group home, that it would allow for up to 4 unrelated persons occupying that space. If there were more than that, they would have to request what's called a reasonable accommodation from the ordinance through staff. And they'd have to provide some information to staff, and the city attorney, along with the director of public works or designee, would determine whether that reasonable accommodation should be granted. And basically, the reasonable accommodation is considered or should be granted unless the accommodation would fundamentally alter the city's land use and zoning patterns, or the impact of that use would be greater than other uses in that zoning district. So we're talking about single family zoning districts specifically. So if that would fundamentally alter the land use pattern or have a greater impact than the uses that would be allowed in that district.
Our ordinance on group homes, we have one?
It's not, all it says is that group homes are listed under the special use permit requirement.
Okay. May I suggest that we get one? Because I know that about 3 years ago, the state passed a law governing them, and Dallas had to redo theirs. And I think Duncanville was just going to wait until everybody else did theirs. So that
Well, what originally happened was there was change in the state law. State law, then Dallas responded to that by adopting basically what we proposed a year ago. That's very labor intensive. Some of the other cities that border the city of Dallas, we were concerned that since Dallas was highly regulating them, that they would then move, and we saw some movement into all the bedroom communities around Dallas, especially the first tier suburbs. And so we were kind of anxious to get something on the books. As it turns out, there hadn't been seen some, but most of them have gone elsewhere, or they've complied with Dallas's regulations instead. Well, what Chastity is proposing is basically has the same effect, but not as labor-intensive regulations.
For group homes?
No, for boarding homes.
I'm
It's
talking
group-
about group homes.
All boarding homes, all group homes are boarding homes. Not all boarding homes are group homes. So those group home regulations are regulated by the state. They, in Dallas, are exempt from regulation, just like they would be here.
But there are, okay, we were dealing with a group home a few years ago. We couldn't do an ordinance, and we just had to bide our time until this all played out. And we did not have an ordinance for a group home that said how many bathrooms you had to have per bedroom or per.
We probably preempted from regulating group homes because there's pervasive regulation by the state. You can only do it between, it's what, 4 above or 5 above. I can't remember off the top of my head. Those are regulated by the state. It's a recognized legitimate land use, and if they comply with the state regulations, I comply with regulations.
So we can't strengthen what the state has done?
No,
No.
we can't regulate what the state does.
Are elderly people considered disabled?
No.
So, that's what.
There's a difference between assisted living and group homes. Group homes are really aimed at people with what I would call traditional ADA disabilities. Seniors or assisted living is a different category. It's a boarding home too, if you will, but it's a subcategory of that that's different. If there's people that have memory loss centers, then they would fall. Senior, they could also fall into a disability. Because not everybody that has Alzheimer's or dementia is a senior. unfortunately, it affects people that are younger, so.
And so, are those also regulated by the state?
Yes, because those are actual, I know there's a term, assisted care facilities, and they're regulated by the state.
And so you don't have any say on those either?
No.
Coming into neighborhoods?
Well, there's a difference between once they start occupying a home, then they may take on characteristics of a group home, because the standards for assisted care facility and assisted living facility, you couldn't meet those requirements in a house. Because they're more nursing care, medical care, so it requires the facility have certain standards in it. So you couldn't get a license for a house for those facilities, where you can for a group home. The whole idea of the group home is to introduce a person with a disability into a residential setting. And so therefore, they don't require the care that you would for, at least arguably, that you would for an assisted care facility. Unfortunately, there are probably people in group homes that need to be in assisted care facilities, not in group homes. We would have to ensure that they had that license. And there will be a time when we have a group home where we're going to get a complaint and find out they're in violation of their state license, and then we have to turn over the state, and the state would then enforce, either remove the patient or the resident, or shut the facility down.
And essentially, with the Texas model standards, it actually also included some standards related to proportionality. So the size of the bedroom, you know, the amount of living space that has to be provided, the amount of restrooms, and those proportionality requirements prohibit someone or prevent someone from taking a house and dividing up every square foot into a bedroom for lease, you know, to rent out. And so essentially, the number would be limited by the proportionality standard. So you couldn't carve up every space. You'd have to have a certain amount of square foot per bedroom. You know, every 2 rooms had to have a bathroom, those kind of provisions. Again, the direction, I guess, that staff is looking for from council is whether or not we even need to approach an ordinance, because currently we prohibit boarding homes, and if that's the direction to do such, although our current zoning ordinance lists group homes under special use permit, doesn't allow, and it doesn't have any other, you know, standards associated with it. And so staff is looking for direction from council in terms of how you would like us to proceed, or but we should entertain an ordinance moving forward to further regulate those.
You just prohibit boarding houses because group homes are protected by state law.
Correct. Now, there are, and Bob, you can weigh in terms of if there's, I know that Richardson and Garland and some other cities have specific provisions in terms of staff still looking at those and still applying those regulations to ensure that they are in compliance, but they still have to be licensed by the state and follow all of the state requirements.
That's kind of redundant, isn't it? Saying you have to comply with the state.
Well, it ensures what you do with that SUP. You write it in your SUP. We do that for alcohol too, like for restaurants. Sometimes we get SUP that if they have or obtain a license for TABC, they keep that license in effect. So if it gets revoked, now they can come back and see Chastity and City Hall to whether to continue that use. Because what you don't want to do is group home that, and I'll be honest with you, the state could do a better job, okay? And so I don't want a group home to turn into a boarding home. It turns into an eyesore and a problem for our neighbors. So I think I would recommend you have some regulation to keep up with that so it doesn't become a problem. Because not all the operators are the best.
So in other words, having that in place, then if the group home loses their state license, we have then a hammer to be able to say, you're out.
Yep.
Whereas otherwise, we might.
Otherwise,
You
you
may
get
not even
caught
know.
in that no man's land, if you will, where you don't have a regulation in place to handle them.
So then move forward then on
Yeah.
that, I would say.
And also to prohibit boarding homes.
Is that-
Yes.
Okay, all
Is
right.
that enough, Drew?
So we need.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We may be slow, but we get it.
I get
Okay.
Very complicated.
We're running out of time, folks, and we need to have an executive session. So,
You know, we can put something in there that's
so, okay.
yeah, as long as we can write it.
I will, it is now 6:55. Bishop Keith Earl, who's from the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Bishop Earl, will you come up? And then following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flags. Will you please stand?
Our Father in heaven, we give thee thanks to be citizens of this great country and of this wonderful Republic of Texas, and also to be residents in this great city of Duncanville. We are grateful for our mayor and city council, city and the city manager, and pray for each of them as they serve this city. We pray for our police and firefighters and other public servants who serve this community, and pray for all the citizens of this community that we can work together to make Duncanville the best place possible to live. We're so grateful for the blessings of freedom that we enjoy in this country, and pray that we will seek leaders locally and nationally that will help us to keep that freedom. Now bless this council meeting tonight, that there might be good discussion and decisions might be reached that will benefit us all. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge the allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. My mayor's report tonight are two good things that are happening here in Duncanville. One is I want to announce that the rice pot is now open. I've heard good things. I have not had an opportunity to go down there, but I will do that within the next day or two. But I hear good reports on how good the food is. So I would encourage all of you, if you don't know where it's located, it's where the old Toshio's restaurant was, right adjacent to the theater center in Main Station. So we would invite everybody to really support our local restaurants. And the second thing, I hear that over with our EON facility that Dr. Poisa from, he's the Chief Strategy Officer of Parkland Hospital, took his nursing, or three of the RNs who head up a part of Parkland Hospital over, and they're investigating the things that can happen over there in virtual reality for Parkland Hospital. So that's a real plus in our hat that the word is getting out, and now they're beginning to look at producing things for our local facilities here. So things are moving along with EON, and we're excited about where we're going with that operation. Now it's time for council member reports. Council? Councilwoman Thomas?
I'd just like to remind everybody that we're having the Comprehensive Planning Committee meeting, the town hall. What time?
6:30 to sign in and 7 o'clock will start.
6:30 to sign in, 7 o'clock to start at the senior center. Over across the street from the library, and this is tomorrow evening. And so if you have ideas about the city or you want to hear other people's ideas, I encourage you to come out. And it's comprehensive, so anything that you want to have the city consider, please come out and let's make this a great comprehensive plan.
I would like to add a little bit to that if you can't make that, and we'll have city staff members there and personnel to take your comments, and we want to hear comments from our folks. But if you can't make that meeting, you can go on the website, the city website, and there is a questionnaire that you're asked to fill out, and then you can submit it right there online. And then there are several places in town, like the Senior Citizens Center, the lobby of this building, down, I believe, at the field house, where there's big boards up where you can write your comments on those boards. I noticed one over there, this morning I was over at the Senior Citizens Center, and it said no more squash. So somebody's not liking all of the meals that they're serving over there. But anyway, those are important comments that we're going to take and use in developing our comprehensive plan for the city for the next, what we'll use for the next 20 years. Councilmember Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to remind the community of Duncan Switch this Saturday on Main Street from 8 to 2.
Okay, seeing no more further lights from the council, City Manager?
Mayor, I have no report tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item is item number 3, which is we have no proclamations tonight, but item number 3 is the citizens' input, and I will remind everybody that they've got 2 minutes if they want to give input at this time. I've got several cards that have been filled out, so if I'll just invite you to, as I call your name, to come up and give your name and address for the records, and then talk about what subject you want to talk about. First one I've got is Gail Slacker.
Gail Sliger, 1405 South Main, Duncanville, Texas. Being a farmer business owner, I have discovered that it is not profitable for me to be hiring a third, training a third, and a third of my employees going out the door. I'm sure it's much more difficult and expensive to train our first responders than it would ever be for me and private industry to train staff. I would like for this council to seriously consider, since I've checked and we have 4 vacancies in our fire department, people that have left for better paying jobs, 5 in our police department, to look at our salaries for our city employees and especially those of our first responders that are responsible for the safety of our citizens. I know you struggle with budgets, but when we have to train, I'm sure it costs somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 figures to train those, especially first responders, that we would seriously consider some sort of compensation to our city employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart Boston, is that correct?
My name is Stuart Boston. I live at 103 North Horn, and I've been living here for 14 years. And I've always had a passion for skateboarding, and I've acquired an uncountable amount of friends through it. I'm sorry. I plan to make many more friends in the years to come, but that's not the reason I'm here today. I'm here because my friends and I often find ourselves getting kicked out for simply riding our skateboards. We feel like we have a bad reputation that can't be helped due to the fact that we have no safe place to practice at without getting the boot, which is why I'm asking for your support in the idea of a skate park or even a vacant lot for us to build upon. You can have my word that if you provide us sanctuary, we will make something great of it. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we cannot respond to you, but the city manager can, so.
Thank you, Mr. Boston. What I would tell you is that the Parks Department is getting ready to undertake a Parks Recreation Master Plan process here later this year. They're working with the Park Board on selecting a consultant here very soon. And what I would encourage you to do is to pay attention to when those meetings are and when they're going to be soliciting input as they start planning and looking at what our future park needs are. We need input like yours. Thank you.
Sandra Johnson.
Sandra Johnson, 711 Cliffwood Circle. First of all, I want to thank you all for allowing citizens like myself to have the opportunity to talk. First of all, I just want to commend the city for having such outstanding park employees. I walk over here at Armstrong Park every morning around 5 o'clock. The place is immaculate. After I finish walking, the citizens, I'm sorry to say, are not that immaculate because there's trash cans right available and trash right in front or around the trash can. And the park employees are very kind and considerate of all the people that walk. The second thing I wanted to say is I'm newly retired and I have taken advantage of the Senior Hopkins Center and gone on trips with them. In fact, we had dinner out tonight just before this meeting, and the bus drivers, Raymond and Mary Lou, are outstanding employees. And Jeanette that works at the front desk, I just can't say enough. And I'm looking forward to many more times of fun and fellowship with citizens of Duncanville. But thanks to you all for allowing people that are retired to have, instead of paying for our kids now, we're able to pay some things for ourselves. And thank you for allowing us to do that. And thank you for all the time and effort you all put into this, because I know you're not paid employees. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. Cliff Boyd.
Cliff Boyd, 1019 Quail Run. It sure feels better over here. Especially knowing y'all just finished all your good budget time. I have a couple of things. I like a lot of people, have been somewhat remiss by not coming back. I forget how good it did feel to have people come and stand over here and not always ask, but to thank people. And I thank y'all for your service. I certainly understand the commitment that you make. I have just a couple of thank yous, and I have a gift that I brought you from Eon. I appreciate your comments on that. Eon is really doing a good job, but I have something I want to leave with you, but I want to say thank you to the Public Works Department. I had asked for a consideration to look at westbound Wheatland Road, right turn lane only out at the McDonald's at Clark Road. A very dangerous situation because when it was built, there were only 2 lanes over on the Dallas side. Now there are 3. And with the school going on out there, people are going to be really moving down that road. And when you try to go from the center lane 20 yards and turn into McDonald's in Dallas, it was very difficult and unsafe. And I thank you for the recognition of that by somebody just mentioning it and bringing it up. So I thank you for that. I also just want to tell you, on top of what the mayor said about Eon, we are having some real serious visitors. And tomorrow at 1 o'clock, there's actually, I think, a preview of the International Museum of Culture, the project that they had looked at. It didn't happen as fast as they wanted, but they didn't have the students graduating that they wanted out of the first class. So it's taken longer, but it is making process. What I'm going to give you tonight is, you've been watching the Olympics and you've seen the $1,000 pieces of equipment that Panasonic sells and everything. I want to give each one of y'all a device that will allow you to put it on your cell phone, whether it be Android or an iPhone, and you can view the virtual reality as if you had a $1,200 piece of equipment viewing the virtual reality. And they have a free library for y'all to go to
eonreality.com, okay?
Thank you, Cliff. Cliff and I discussed this, and I told him I wanted one of those, even if I had to buy it, so, and he made it happen. A lot of people don't know, but Cliff is the city's representative to the 3-member EON board. And these are great. I've got the EON app on my phone. I'll put this on after council meeting. If anybody wants to come up and see one of these and see what virtual reality is all about, well,
Yeah, and
be glad to show it to you.
you can purchase these on the Eon Reality website. They're very inexpensive in relation to any other device. And just get some of your grandkids to help you, and they'll show you how to use it. Okay?
Thank you. The final card I have is Grady Smithy.
Grady Smithy, 1806 Cedar Hill Road, Duncanville resident since 1950. When my family moved out here, there were 853 people in census in 1950. By the time I graduated from high school in 1960, we had 4,000. 1980, we had 10,000. In 1970, we had 10,000. In 1980, we had grown to 28,000 people. We were basically overwhelmed by growth. We made every mistake during that period of time that most emerging suburbs made. We did an inadequate street system. In fact, one year, back in the early 70s, we lost all the streets in town because they were all asphalt, and we had, we got under freezing, stayed under freezing for about a week, and it was real wet, and it popped almost all our streets out. So we had a heck of a time. And, we just made a lot of mistakes. But, we had a farm, we had the old city council style of only that was designed for 5,000 and under cities. The 5 councilmen and a mayor that couldn't vote except of a tie. Well, at least we changed that. But, we knew we had to pass some bond issues. And in 1985, we passed, a big bond issue for us, a bigger one than Duncanville, 3 times as big as Duncanville ever passed for, $16 million. We passed another one, 5 years later, $20 million. And those 2 bond issues gave us the money that we need to go out and try to improve our street system, improve our sewer system, improve our water systems, do a lot of work. Then those 2 bond issues, y'all been paying for the last 25 years, and in the 22 years I served on the council, I was always looking forward to the fact we get those things paid for. You could do an awful lot of good. You can do a lot of the things we need to do in terms of improvements in the infrastructure, and you can also, for the family, you can probably bring our employees up to some sort of reasonable parity with what they can get working for other people, because I'm awfully tired of us training people for everybody in the Metroplex, and I know y'all are too. It costs us a whole lot more money to do it this way than it would do to pay them what we owe them.
Thank you, sir. That's all the cards I have, so we'll move right on into our consent items. That's consent items. Are the items listed under number 4, and they are A through G, and I'll ask the city secretary at this time if she'll read the captions on those.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the July 26, 2016 special city council meeting, the July 28, 2016 special city council meeting, August 2nd, 2016 regular city council meeting, and the August 5th, 2016 city council budget workshop. 4B, consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, authorizing the annual procurement of tree maintenance services with Shawnee Mission Tree Service, Inc., DBA, Arbor Masters Tree Service, and the unit amount bid through a City of Grapevine Cooperative purchasing agreement with an estimated annual expenditure amount of $98,000, authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary documents and providing for an effective date. 4C, consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, exercising the second of 2 one-year renewal options for professional investment advisory services with Valley View Consulting, LLC, and the unit amount proposed with an estimated annual expenditure of $11,670, authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary documents and providing for an effective date. 4D, consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, authorizing a 3-year contract for billing and collection of emergency medical services fees with PST Services, Inc., in the unit amount proposed with an estimated expenditure amount of $148,055, authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary documents and providing for an effective date. 4E, consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, awarding the bid number IFB 16-19 to Durable Specialties, Inc. for North Duncanville Road and West Redbird Lane traffic signal in the amount of $176,600, authorizing the city manager or his designee to issue and execute the appropriate purchase and/or work orders and providing an effective date. 4F, consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, approving the terms and conditions of Amendment Number 4 to the Dallas County Household Hazardous Waste Interlocal Agreement to coordinate the planning and implementation of a household hazardous waste collection program, from October 1, 2016 through September 30th, 2017, for a cost not to exceed $59,016, authorizing the city manager to execute said agreement and other necessary documents and providing an effective date. 4G, consider approval of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, amending resolution number 2015-020328 to increase the number of positions to the Senior Advocacy Commission from 5 members to 9 members and providing for an effective date.
Council, you've heard the captions read. The chair at this time will entertain a motion concerning these items.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Will you please vote? Thank you very much. Going to item number 5, which is consideration of the individual items. Item number A is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed tax rate of 0.758447 for the fiscal year 2016-2017, fiscal year applicable to tax revenue receivable in fiscal years 2017.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before we conduct the public hearing, I will give a briefing to Council and to the public concerning the tax rate and concerning an overview of our entire budget and more especially our general fund budget. So, wanted to go over our budget process real quickly. We started on the budget process in March, as we do every year, with a kickoff meeting, and we work our way through March and April, building the budget with the departments and then reviewing through the cost centers. We have 68 cost centers. We have individual meetings on all of those. And then we had a budget workshop, preliminary budget workshop on June 23rd. We got our certified tax roll on the 25th. We got our effective and rollback tax rates, which is the subject of this public hearing. We got those calculations on July 28th. And then on August 5th, we did a budget workshop. And then tonight we're having the first public hearing on the tax rate. And we'll come back on September the 13th and have a second required public hearing on the tax rate. And we'll also have a public hearing on the budget itself. And then September 20th, we'll bring the budget back for approval for the council. So of course, when we start looking at the budget, we look at the goals that are set by the council, and we always want to keep those in mind as we're building the budget, and want to review those real quickly, support the council's strategic priorities, utilize sound financial principles, and to maintain expenditures within expected revenues. So those are the goals that we had when we built the 2017 budget, and I think we'll demonstrate that we've adhered to those. On January the 12th, we conducted a town hall meeting we had at the Senior Center, and we wanted to get some input from the citizens on what type of things they wanted to see the city do in terms of things that we spend, keep spending the same money on, or in terms of what they would like to see us spend more money on,
And then we had a parking spot for miscellaneous topics that they wanted to consider for the future. And so you can see up on the board, these numbers represent the number of votes that were received for all of those different categories. And so for the most part, people felt comfortable with spending the same on Parks and Rec, police, the yellow light flashing program, fire and streets, and then they wanted to spend more on economic development, the bike trails, the walking and bike trails, street improvements, July 4th fireworks, fire, police, splash parks, so on. And so as we built the budget, we incorporated as much of these ideas into the budget as we could. And so from an economic development standpoint, we've got the comprehensive planning effort that we spoke about, that we'll have the meeting tomorrow night regarding that. And in the economic development budget, we're projected to increase that budget by a little over $700,000 this year, and that's primarily due to the fact that we have a lot of economic incentives that we had in the past to bring business here that are now paid off, and so that's freeing up a lot of money for the EDC to use for new economic incentives. The walking and bicycle trails, we've included that, and $75,000 is set aside in our innovation fund that we'll be putting toward that effort. And as we spoke about earlier, we'll be developing that park master plan and the trail master plan later this year. Then for street and alley improvements in this budget, we set aside $1 million to pre-fund the 2018 and subsequent years street and alley maintenance needs. And these are going to be other streets and alleys that obviously are going to be beyond preventive maintenance, and those will require capital improvement project funding. Then for the 4th of July, people said they wanted to have the fireworks back, and so we did that this year. It cost quite a lot more money to put it on because of the heightened security, but it was a successful effort, and we've budgeted again for that in 2017. Our fire and police, we did compensation adjustments to get closer to market competitiveness, and then also in the innovation fund we included security enhancements and new equipment for some of the specialized police units. And then for the senior center, we did funding for a signage change with a new name to make it something that is a little more appealing to the seniors, and then to buy some new furniture and do some renovations on the inside that were recommended by the Senior Advisory Services Commission. So just look at our grand total of all of our budgets put together. You can see that the expenditures by fund, they total $56.3 million. And so 53% of that comes from the general fund, 30% from the utility fund, and then the other little slices of the pie that go around all the way down to the smallest amount, 2.2% for the field house. It's also important to look at those expenditures, how they break up in the different categories, and you can see that 38% of the total expenditures go to salary and benefits because we are an organization that requires a lot of services, so we're employee heavy, and that's typical of both cities. Then the services category picks up 35% of those expenditures. Those are things for like gas and electric utilities, contractual services for professional service type things that we can't do in-house. And then the other slices of the pie going around to the smallest of that at about 1% for economic incentives and hotel occupancy tax grants. So we'll look then at our total amount of revenues for the 17 budget. That's $55.6 million. And about 3%, 53% of that goes to the general fund, and 30% from the utility fund, and then again, the smaller pieces of the pie going around to the field house at about 2%. So we look at that total revenue of $55 million. Where does that come from? 24% of that comes from property tax, 16% from sales tax, 15% from wastewater fees, 14% from water fees, and then we have transfers that account for about 7% of that. Those will be transfers between funds. For instance, we transfer money into the general fund to cover work that's pervasive across all departments, such as human resources, accounting, finance, IT department, etc. So let's look at the general fund big picture. The 15-16 revised budget, we're projecting that we're going to have an ending fund balance of about $6.8 million. That represents 95 days of operations or fund balance. Our target that was set was 70 days, so we're going to end the year well in excess of that. And so what we did with that is we took part of that to the Innovation Fund, and we'll demonstrate that a little bit. Well, if you really compare down towards the middle of transfer to the Innovation Fund, last year we transferred $1.1 million, and this year we're transferring $2.2 million, and that's broken down between about 1.3 from the debt service fund, and then the rest coming from the excess fund balance that we anticipate from 2016. And so with the things that we have budgeted now, we're going to have an ending fund balance that we project to be about just slightly over $6 million. That represents 77 days of fund balance, and our target is 75 days of fund balance. So we still have some amount of cushion even above our target. And we've raised our target for the number of days of fund balance simply because we want to have a little more money set aside for emergencies, or if the economy takes a turn for the worse and sales tax or other things don't pan out like we think. So now let's talk about the general fund revenues. This is the biggest source of revenues and the biggest source of expenditures within the entire city. So 46% of our revenues come from property tax, about 24% come from sales tax. The transfers I spoke of a minute ago, this is transfers in from other funds, enterprise funds like the water utility fund that has user fees, and those of us that are paid out of the general fund, we calculate a transfer in to cover our cost of our salaries and our work and time. Then we have franchise receipts at about 7%, permits at 4%, fines at about 2.5%, and other revenue at 2.3%, and then recreation fees just a little above 0.5%. So then we break those expenditures down by category for the general fund, and again, as I said earlier, we're an employee, personnel heavy entity, and so salaries and benefits account for 60% of our entire cost. Services, 23.4% for the general fund, and then the innovation fund takes up about 7.3%. Supplies about 4.7%. Capital 2.1%. Economic incentives a little less than 1%, and debt service at about a little over 0.5%, and then our transfers out from the general fund to the grant funds is about 0.3%. Then we take and compare the adopted 15 budget, compare that, the adopted 16 budget, and compare that to the fiscal year 17 budget. I've calculated in the next to the furthest right column what that increase or that decrease is for each of the major categories. And of course, our property taxes have gone up because our valuations have increased. That accounts for about 8.1% of the total increase, which is in grand total $1.5 million. 7% from sales tax, and then you can follow on down the other areas. Some of them have declined. Things such as our franchise receipts have declined slightly because we have some changes in how we account, in the permits and fees. We have a change in how we account for our 911 fees that come in from the entities that pay in from telecommunications sources, and we used to account for that as a revenue, and now we do an offset to our expenditures through our Southwest Regional Communications Center. So as part of the analysis of our property taxes, what I wanted to do is break down between residential, business, personal property, and commercial taxable values and compare that over time. And so you can see that from 2008 to 2016, we've just now built up our total taxable property values to just a little above where they were in 2008. And so where did that decline come from? That was primarily driven by the housing crash that started in 2008. So you can see those years where our property values went down, down, down. Now the interesting thing to note here is that we've had a 2% flip between residential and commercial taxable value. In 2008, we had 67% of our total taxable value was residential, and that's declined to 65%. And then what's increased has been the commercial part of it. The business personal property has remained steady, the same. And so that shows that we've had economic growth and economic health in the community. And if we break down our total grand tax rate, counting all the entities, the school district, the city, Parkland Hospital, the total tax rate is 2.95 per $100 valuation. And so you can see in this next pie chart how that's broken down by entity. So you see that the independent school district gets almost 52% of that total tax rate. In the city of Duncanville, we get just less than 26%. And then, of course, the rest of the pie is broken up to the hospital and the Dallas County School and the Community College District. So on this chart, I wanted to show how the average Duncanville city-only portion of the tax, how that's tracked over time. And so you can see that, again, those values have just now come back up to a point where they're about the same as they were in 2008. So the values are about the same, actually still for residential property. They're a little bit less, but of course the tax rate has increased during that span of time. And so in 2008, the average city-only Duncanville tax was $790. Now it's $854. Again, on this chart, I wanted to show how those average taxable single-family residence values, how they have tracked. So still, we're just a little bit less than we were in 2008. This year's single-family resident value, which comes from the Dallas Central Appraisal District, is $112,645 for Duncanville, and it was $113,005 back in 2008. So I took the cost of all the expenditures and said, oh, well, you know, what are the taxable values? And I said, what does that cost per day? And so this chart shows how that is tracked over the past 8 years. 2008, it was $2.16 for cost of service per day. In 2016, that's $2.34. So what do you get for $2.34 a day? I wanted to equate that to a monthly amount so that it might be something a little bit more comparable. that equates to $72.54 per month. Well, for that, you get police, fire protection, you get emergency medical services, that's our ambulance services, 400 lane miles of streets, you get sidewalks, you get traffic signals, you get street lights, you get 17 parks, 13 playgrounds, 244 acres of parkland, you get a senior center, you get a public library, you get code enforcement, you get building and health inspections. All of this for about the same amount of money that most people pay for their cable bill or their cell phone bill. So this chart really is the subject of the public hearing tonight. In the green column on the far right, I compare our actual tax rate, which is a little over or 75.8 cents per 100 valuation. Compare that to the effective tax rate, which is slightly over 70 cents. So there's about, the current rate's about 5 cents over the actual, or the effective rate's about 5 cents over, under the actual tax rate. And then the rollback tax rate, which is 76.3 cents per 100, and so you can see that we're about a half cent still underneath that rollback rate. So what does a penny on the tax rate mean? Well, we make that calculation. The fiscal year 17 certified taxable values for City of Duncanville were $1,969,000,000. And you take that, divide it by 100, multiply it by a penny, that gives you $196,993. The way that's currently split between the general fund and our debt service fund means an impact to the general fund of about $179,000. So I said, well, you know, let's also take and look at what a single family residence value, that average, which I shared for you on a previous chart, $112,645 comes from the Central Appraisal District. If you look at that and see what a penny does, that's got an annual impact to each citizen of about $11.26, or about 3 cents a day. So on this chart, I wanted to compare City of Duncanville's tax rate to some of our sister cities, and you can see the black line in the middle of the chart is the City of Duncanville, DeSoto being just slightly under us, and then Cedar Hill further underneath us. The blue line, Dallas, and the purple line at the top being Lancaster. So there, we fall in the middle, so to speak. I wanted to also take our total residential taxable value, divide that by the population, and come up with how much residential tax value there is per person in the City of Duncanville. And I wanted to compare that to some of our sister cities. And you can see that the residential taxable value is $33,215. It's near the bottom of that chart, with Lancaster being slightly underneath us. And as you go up the chart, you see that that residential taxable value per person increases for Dallas, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill. Another way to look at that is to see what the residential tax burden is per capita. So I took the grand total of all the residential tax values and multiplied those by our tax rate and divided that by the population. And so again, you can see that we're near the bottom of the chart on that, Lancaster being just a little bit underneath us at $248 tax burden per person, and then Duncanville being at $252, then rising up to Dallas, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill at $334 per person. This chart shows what our sales tax history has been since 2004, coming all the way up to 2015. And the red part of the bar represents our general fund sales tax, and then we have a property relief, our portion that's dedicated to property tax relief, and then another portion, same equal portion, that goes to fund our Economic Development Corporation. And so you can see that we had that downward spiral And as the housing crash, because a lot of the businesses in town are tied to the housing industry, they manufacture products or sell products that are related. And so, as expected, those sales tax revenues decreased as we went through the market crash for housing. And then we've had a pretty good span of increasing our sales tax, which means that our economic development efforts are working and our businesses are doing better. I've already pretty much talked about all of these general fund revenue assumptions previously, and I won't bore you with those things. Let's get to the expenditures. The general fund expenditures by department, the grand total being $30,380,000. So the way that's broke down, you can see that police and fire account for almost half of that entire amount together. And Public Works takes the next slice of the pie at 16%, Parks and Rec at 12%, our general government 9.7%, and the transfer to the Innovation Fund takes up 7.3% of that. And then finance, municipal court, and purchasing altogether account for 4.4%. Economic incentive grants, about 1%. And then our loan payment that we have for the EON is about 0.79%, and then transfer to the grants, 0.31%. So I wanted to take by the major cost centers, which are general government, finance, parks, rec, police, public works, and fire. I wanted to take and look at what the percentage increase or decrease were for those. And as you can see that as we've built the 17 budget, we have increases across every department. And those increases are primarily the compensation plan that we've put in, along with some other restoration of other services that have been cut in the past, and making an effort to get back to higher service levels. So let's look at what we did for the Innovation Fund. I alluded to earlier that we transferred our unused debt service of $1.1 million into the Innovation Fund, and we transferred another $1 million in from excess general fund reserves. And that gives us a total Innovation Fund balance for 2017 of $2.2 million. So I alluded earlier that we had pre-funded the pavement management system that we've talked about before, putting $1 million aside towards street improvements. And then we had facility improvements for $351,000. Those are broken down by security cameras and facility repairs and fueling system, software, chemical storage building, etc. Then we had park improvements at $705,000. Majority of that would go to replace the gym flooring in the field house at $500,000, and then those other park improvements. And then general items that relate to IT, the $168,000, that's some library equipment and some additional equipment for police and code enforcement. So that brings us to the $2.2 million that we've dedicated to or putting aside to the Innovation Fund. So right now, the way that the budget stands, as I talked about earlier, is we anticipate that we'll end fiscal year 17 with this budget at a little over $6 million at 77 days of fund balance, or 77 days of operations. Our designated operating reserve of 75 days is $5.8 million. So that leaves us a cushion of $165,960. So when we talked with the council at our budget workshop, they asked us to come back and share some possibilities for how to use that additional $165,000. And we talked about illuminated street signs, perhaps doing a splash pad, perhaps doing some highway overpass enhancements, or possibly other things that have not come to the surface yet in terms of concrete idea. So the way we looked at this is the $165,000 for the illuminated street signs. This is an example of one. We could purchase about 11 additional street signs and put up across the city. This is a drawing, a rendering of a splash pad. There are several options for doing a splash pad. This is the least expensive of those. This one would cost about $300,000, so obviously would have just a little over half of that funding in the 165, so we would have to have additional funds to do a splash pad. And there are several, or there are two other renderings, one at $400,000, one at $500,000, to do something that's a little larger and has a few more features. I did not include those tonight, but they were part of the packet that was sent out to the council questions that came up. So if you refer to that, you'll see those additional options. This is an example of a lighted overpass bridge. We don't have exact firm costs on what these things what they would cost at this point in time. This is something we'd have to work with TxDOT, and we'd also have to find out what type of ongoing costs for electricity or other ongoing costs we would have when we partner with them. So I don't know exactly what this would cost, but this is an example, or one example, of a lighted overpass bridge. This is an example of one of the projects we did with TxDOT as an entryway. We did a Duncanville monument sign there with some nice amenities around it, with some plants, and looks real nice. This is another example of something we could do with the money. This is one of the amenities improvements along I-30. They did a rendering of Tom Landry and some football players in the background on the retention wall, or the sound barrier. Another possibility would be to do a larger monument sign like the one that Mesquite has. So this is just another idea of how we could use that money. Another example would be that we could do a name on the stripe that goes across the overpass, name of the street that's going over. And this is another example of an overpass. It just has a plain stripe that goes across to the left, the red stripe going across. And then the last one, the Grand Prairie, they have an entryway sign. This is yet another example of a possible way to use that $165,000. And with that, I'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll move into the public hearing.
Councilman Harvey.
Thank you, Richard, for your wonderful presentation. So many charts and graphs. I lost count at 35. Yes.
45 slides.
40. Oh, okay. All right.
I just would make a note that I started out with 75, so this is a much trimmed down version.
Yes, I'm all for less government. Yes. Where are the fireworks coming from?
The fireworks are budgeted in the general fund. We paid for most of that this year out of the innovation fund, but we included that in the general fund budget for 17.
Because you went through that slide that said all the things that we get for like $2.30-something a day, and $2.34. Thank you, Mayor. And so I kept looking for fireworks, and so I didn't see them. So your list was not completely all-inclusive.
I'll add that one.
All right, thank you so much. Now, this is kind of a technical question, and if I'm wrong, correct me. So in the Innovation Fund, there is an amount that comes from unused debt service funds. So am I right in assuming that in the tax rate, there is an additional amount over and above what's needed in this particular year for debt service, and then that winds up going into the Innovation Fund? Am I going in the right direction?
You're on track. What we chose to do, and we had conversations last year with council about this, and we've had some degree of discussion again. What we chose to do is to maintain that portion of the tax rate that's dedicated to debt service, so that if we decide that we want to issue bonds,
Then
we can
do
issue
it
an amount
tax
without
increase.
changing the tax rate.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions from the council?
I don't expect you to have this answer, but if you could get it, the rate of inflation since 2008 to today, and how that impacts, because I know that our values went down, but our cost of business still went up, and we're having to make up for that.
We can look and chart out the consumer price index and put that maybe alongside one of those charts to make that, to see how that looks, yes.
Anyone else? Okay, this is a public hearing on the proposed tax rate of 0.758447 for the fiscal year 16-17, and it's applicable to the tax rates receivable in fiscal year 17. Where this portion tonight will be on the tax rate, whether you think it's right, whether you think it's too high, whether you think it should be decreased. And that's the portion that we'll take tonight in a public hearing. Then on the 13th of September, we'll come back with a second public hearing, and it'll not only be on the tax rate, but it will be also on the individual budget items that if you've got some you want to talk about. So at this time, I will open the floor for discussion on the tax rate. And that's what we need to hear from you tonight about this tax rate. I'll ask you to please come up and give your name and address. I'm not imposing a time limit on it, but I would also ask that after the speaker has spoken on the issue, if you agree with him, there's no need to come up and say the same thing again. I would ask you to just come up and say, well, I agree that we ought to increase the tax rate, lower the tax rate, or whatever. So, so at this time, I'll open the floor. This is a public hearing, and so if you'll please come up and give your name and address for the records.
My name is Sheldon Silk, 14 Polo Court. I'd like to just ask a question, I guess, before I begin. The PowerPoint presentation and the written material, as well as what was presented tonight, showing the City Council Budget Workshop of August the 5th. On that particular document, it says that there will be a public hearing on the budget and the tax rate on August 16th, as well as September 13th. And then I went to the website as well and looked at the agenda for tonight's meeting and looked throughout the entire Duncanville website to try to, again, find information about a public hearing tonight regarding the budget. And all I continued to see was a reference to public hearing regarding the tax rate. So I'm a little perplexed and confused because earlier tonight, even on the PowerPoint you showed, it specifically says this is a public hearing on the tax rate and on the budget. So that's my question. So what can I speak to tonight?
Go ahead.
Tonight is the required public hearing on the tax rate, but since the tax rate feeds into the general fund budget is why we made the presentation on the general fund budget. So really it is also public hearing on the general fund budget, because if there's changes to that, that can technically affect the tax rate, or if there's changes to the tax rate, that will definitely change the general fund budget. So they're interlocked for that, but we're not covering the other portions of the budget like the utility fund or anything tonight.
So can I speak to the budget as well as the tax side? All right, thank you. I want to commend Mr. Summerlin for his presentation and a very convincing argument that for $2.34 we certainly get a great deal living in Duncanville. However, I want to hopefully point out in my comments tonight that I think we could get even a much better deal. I would go back to a couple of comments made by persons during the citizens' comment, and I'm not going to go into detail about them, but just want to echo what two individuals said regarding unnecessary expenditures and resulting from excessive turnover in our public safety and fire department. And I hope that we can do something to absolutely change that. So I want to begin to raise a number of serious concerns that I have regarding the proposed budget, and I want to begin with a brief summary of the major issues that I identify, and then provide you with some detailed examples to substantiate my concerns. From my review of the documents on the website regarding the budget and taxes, number one, I'm led to conclude that there's an absence of sound business principles in the administration of city government and how our dollars are spent. Number two, huge sums of dollars are spent on consulting reports, and the findings from these reports at times are selectively used to promote individual agendas of whomever within or outside of city government, benefiting select individuals at the overall expense of the taxpayers. Number three, I cannot find substantial efforts being made to increase revenues. I find no evidence that performance objectives are even established for employees in terms of those who have a direct revenue-generating ability. There is little evidence to suggest cost containment is a priority in city administration. Goals for spending a huge percent of taxpayer dollars seem to be established on the basis of very minimal citizen input. Number six, there seems to be a pervasive tax and spend mentality throughout the budget without any evidence of a desire or a commitment to lower taxes for the citizens. Number seven, there is never any mention of a risk, reward, or benefit concept or return on investment being applied to most expenditures. It is as if there is always going to be some great benefit from spending on this or that, and never any analysis or discussion of the downside or the inherent risks in taking the action. It leads me to conclude, at times, we must operate in an adult version of the childhood game of pretend in expending tax dollars. We tax, we spend, and if there is little to no benefit, well, we just pretend that all is well, or it never happened, or whatever it is we want to make up. Number eight, most of the proposed increases in major expenditures, except salaries for police and fire departments, which I think are absolutely important to be increased. But most of the other proposed increases in major expenditures seem inappropriate at this time, given your spending currently approximately $250,000 on a comprehensive plan for the future of the city. That plan will be developed over the next several months, and it seems to me that major expenditures should be pending the results of the findings of the plan. It seems to me there should be a moratorium on any of these proposed increases until after the plan is submitted, and which should offer us a more targeted and focused list of possible directions to emphasize and ensure the continued viability of our city. In reading the documents on the website regarding the city council capstones, you have to wonder, how are we ever to become, quote unquote, the basketball and sports tourism capital of Texas? And furthermore, quote, to be the edutainment and recreation capital of Texas. Yes, we have a great basketball team and legacy, but using trendy phrases and empty rhetoric sounds almost grandiose to me. Where is the evidence to support these capstones are in fact achievable? How realistic is this future vision? So to give you some specific examples of the concerns I just highlighted, let's start at the beginning of the document, budget goals. Number 2, it says use sound financial principles. It goes on to talk about adherence to recommended financial practices and principles. But you only have to read a few pages of the document to recognize that total revenues by source are $55.6 million, total expenditures, $56.4 million. Whatever happened to the principle of a balanced budget, or even better, achieving a budget surplus? There's a quote, the proposed FY 2017 budget is structurally balanced, meaning ongoing revenues and fund balances reserve are not used to fund ongoing operations. This is from the city manager's prelude to the budget. So then look at $1,089,000 of excess revenue, general revenue funds is also proposed to transfer to the Innovation Fund. And the general fund budget includes a transfer of $1.3 million to the Innovation Fund. This Innovation Fund, with all its initiatives, as you know, comes from the thinking of your previous city manager, to whom you paid an annualized salary of approximately $260,000 plus various benefits. It seems to me her legacy is something we should heartily espouse. Citizen input into the budget. There was reference again to it tonight. We learned that, quote unquote, more than 50 citizens attended a January 2016 town hall meeting and gave views on 3 major questions about city spending. But I have to ask you, is this the basis that you use for citywide decision-making on how you prioritize budget spending? The idea of more than 50? It seems to me that there ought to be several thousands that are giving input. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this forum of town hall of 50 people, but it seems to me we would have input from citizens numbering in the thousands, not just 50. Now, this is applicable to the tax rate as well as the budget. There's a graph, a chart that shows the quote unquote, the average taxable value of single-family residences. It shows a 9% increase between 2015 and 2016, and another 9% increase between 2014 and 15 in the average Duncanville city tax paid and the cost of services. So then compare that. So that's a total of 18% over this 3-year period, 2-year period. So then compare this with government figures for the cost of living in the Consumer Price Index and Social Security adjustments for the same time period. For 2015, there was a 1.7% increase, and in 2016, there will be no increase. So for this 2-year period, there's an average of less than 1% increase for the past 2 years. It seems to me that since about 5,000 persons age 65 or older reside in Duncanville, according to the US Census, I ask you, what are you doing to help us? Isn't it time for you to put a priority on decreasing expenditures and lowering taxes? I noted, and I think it's great to hear, that sales tax is increasing. Specifically, year over year, July of last year to July of this year, 17% increase. Translates $105,000. That's terrific. But then I also learned that in that sales tax, there's 0.50% that goes to Duncanville General Fund for property tax relief. I'd like to know, where's the property tax relief? You're getting a percent of sales tax that's designated for tax relief. Your sales tax just went up, you're 17%, and you're turning around and you're saying to citizens and us on a fixed income relying on Social Security that have gotten less than 1% over the last 2 years, when you look at the CPI and Social Security, you say, here you are, you're spending, you're getting 9% over here and 9% over there, and you're getting 7 on the housing values, and then you're getting 7% on the tax year over year. So where is the tax relief? So we learned you're going to propose an overall 2017 budget increase of over 5%, and $1.5 million of it comes from property tax, and about $1 million of that, will account for $1 million of that revenue. But what other revenue do you generate? And this, to me, is a real sore issue. Your franchise fees decrease 1.7%. Your permits and fees decrease 11%. Your fines barely increase at $17,000, and you did increase $11,600 from quote-unquote other sources. So in conclusion, we generate virtually no appreciable revenue without taxes. Yet you want to add another code enforcement officer spending $51,000. I ask you, if permits and fees are decreasing, what have you targeted as the increase in revenue that will result from this new position? In other words, do you ever establish a performance objective such as, if I spend $51,000 and I hire a new code enforcement officer, can I at least have some approximation, some guess, or let's just pretend, how much money can this person generate in fines, fees, whatever? Now, we clearly need, and I strongly support, another code enforcement officer, but we also desperately need additional revenue to be generated by this new position. The innovation funds on parks, $500,000 to replace the field house gym floor. As I recall, the last budget was $400,000, only a year ago. Again, where's the evidence that this makes any sense to do when we're in the early stages of a master plan for the city? Then we learned the field house is budgeted $1.1 million in revenue, but expenditures will be $1.8 million. So I ask you, how is this sustainable? How can any reasonable person continue to support pouring even more dollars down this seemingly black hole? The EDC economic development. I question the $108,000 for economic development incentive agreements. That's a quote, $108,000 is being allocated. I question that if the recent city council meeting revealing the landscape dollars given to the Pelican House is any indicator of how this money is spent. It requires, in my view, major review and renewed oversight and accountability. And the performance agreement you have with DeFord Lumber. Where is the data to prove that this is an appropriate and judicious use of tax dollars? From a business case standpoint, they would have to be generating at least 2 to 3 times, if not more than that amount, in sales taxes. Now, you make reference to the fact that they are to achieve a certain level of sales tax generation, but I'd like to know, how much is that? And does that substantiate continued payments to them of $300,000 a year? Transportation Improvement and Safety Fund. You note a 30% increase, 30% budget increase of over 2016 of $351,000, but total expenses are $1.5 million, while revenue is 1.51, while revenue is just 1.5. The Hotel Tax Fund. Finally, a bright spot in the budget appears. Revenue increases 33%, or $181,000. But the expenditure highlights state you will allocate $200,000. You've increased 181, but already you're spending $200,000, allocating $200,000, quote, towards sports, tourism, and field house advertising, unquote, to hopefully generate more hotel occupancy. Great goal, but no sooner are the dollars potentially generated than they're spent and on very questionable initiatives. Where is the evidence, the business analysis, to prove that sports tourism is a major direction for Duncanville to take? The sports facility, the Fieldhouse Sports Facility, the pros consulting report is cited for justifying changing management to the city, to a city-employed manager. It goes on to mention the ending fund balance of minus $1.3 million and an expectation that this deficit will begin to decrease, quote unquote. But there's no mention of the key issues pros emphasized. In fact, pros, the consulting company, there's no mention, if in fact you invest another couple of $1 million, the odds of having any real chance of turning around this operation to have a positive financial position for at least several more years. Selective use of information from a major paid consulting report on the field house should be unacceptable as a basis for budgeting additional huge sums of dollars for the facility. Is anyone accountable for this? And is there any consequence for anyone in city management or governance for such decisions? So to conclude, if the real answer is no, not really, then citizens ought to be told the facts so we can be prepared for the inevitable additional tax hikes that will be coming our way. So in closing, I want to emphasize, as a 20-year resident homeowner, I have invested a lot in the community. I want very much to see it thrive in the future. I want our police, fire, emergency services, salaries and benefits to be competitive with any other comparable community. I want us to pursue a number of initiatives that will provide economic growth, but I ask that you spend tax dollars in a prudent and accountable manner. I think we have unique opportunities to grow and offer a high-quality environment for our citizens, but the council has to begin making some hard choices and changes in how it conducts its business if we're to have any chance of being the capital of anything in Texas. I'd suggest that maybe it's good enough to simply preserve the best of what we have, judiciously invest in focused, achievable growth opportunities, and stop pretending that we're going to be a huge economic force successfully competing with anyone, anywhere in the Metroplex. I thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I thank you for your dedication and efforts in moving the city forward.
Ms. Thomas, this is a public hearing. We'll wait to reserve comments and questions until after we close the public hearing. Anyone else?
Eddie Smithy, 1806 Cedar Hill Road. I'm sorry I probably couldn't keep up with all those questions, let alone come up with half an answer, but I do want to answer one of them. And that is in time that I served on, in one of the 3 years that I served on the Economic Development Corporation. We found out, our Economic Development Director found out that when, we were trying to get Papados to go ahead and build. And we found out that Papados built its stores one at a time. They had one group that built them. And we were number 5 on a list of 6 they were having built. And we said, what would it take us to jump from number 5 to number 3 on this list, or number 2 on this list? And they said, well, if you can give us about $300,000, we could probably jump you from number 5 to number 2 on the list. And guess what? We came up with $300,000. We recommended it to the council. Council signed off on it, gave them the $300,000, and you know what? 11 months later, we had our $300,000 back. Now, guess what happened in the other 25 months? we kept getting that sales tax, so we got a whole lot more than our $300 and $30,000 back. We got closer to $1 million back because we made that decision on the Economic Development Corporation. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I think y'all know what you have to do, and I really do. I appreciate what you do up here, and I appreciate the amount of time you spend studying the budget. That's always the hardest part of every year for a councilman. In 22 years, you know, I can testify, we sweated over a lot of budgets. I'm glad you have some money this year so you can finally do some of the things you've had to defer. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Chair will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Will you please vote? Thank you very much. Okay. Councilwoman Thomas. Okay. Council, do any of you have a comment or question? I have one. Mr. Smithy, I've heard you talk about this before because you were on the council at the time. Would you talk about or come up and, has he left? Oh, well, about the, the tax reduction was all about that he's talking about when we got the additional 2 cents. Richard, can you do that?
Yes, sir. I wasn't around at the time that was voted in, but essentially what that does is it does allocate a ½ cent to the general fund, and that ½ cent of sales tax is there in lieu of property tax. So, you know, we would have to come up, we'd have to replace those dollars to fund the general fund with property tax dollars if that ½ cent wasn't dedicated.
Okay.
That's a very simplistic answer.
Yes, ½ cent. Go ahead.
Mayor and Council, I would like to make one clarification or one point. Mr. Silk mentioned the total fund expenditures, revenues, and expenditures, and imply that it was not a balanced budget. And I just want to make a point of clarification that yes, expenditures are more than revenues, but that's because we're transferring from the fund balance, and so those count as expenditures. But when you look at the ongoing expenses of the general fund, they are well below the ongoing revenues, and that is what we mean by that. So yes, we use surplus funds, but we use them for one-time costs. We don't use them for ongoing expenditures, but we'll use them for one-time projects, which is the Innovations Fund. Thank you.
Councilman Harvey.
I will say concerning the meetings that we invite citizens to come, there are public meetings, openly advertised, and we did listen to the citizens that did come. That was documented in the presentation. So I don't know why we don't have thousands. But, you know, we certainly would like to hear from them. But we have to listen to those that do come, and we've demonstrated that we do listen to those that do come. So I don't know, maybe in time more will come. Or maybe the reason why they don't come is because maybe they're just satisfied with the way things are going, and if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Well, this item was to conduct a public hearing. There's no action to be taken tonight on this. So we'll move on to item number B, which is consider an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 16A Sign Guidelines, Article 3, Rules for Specific Sign Types, Section 16A-23, Banners, subsection G, Duration, and by amending subsection E, Placement, and providing a savings clause, and providing for a severability clause, and providing a penalty of a fine not to exceed the sum of $2,000 for each offense, authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary documents, and providing an effective date.
Mayor and council, I'll be very brief. I have no charts or graphs. As we discussed in our briefing session last week, the Design Control Board met on February 11th and discussed some changes to our sign ordinance, and in particular the banner ordinance. What I have up here are the changes that include restricting signage to only the building on which the business applying for the banner permit is occupying. And then secondly, changing from a 12-month period to a 3-month period for permits to be allowed. Got a couple pictures of signs that have been up. We have plenty of these, but these are signs that have been up in excess of 12 months. They're in essence substituting for putting up a more expensive pole sign, which lots of business people do invest in. And as a result, the Sign Control Board made a recommendation to ask the council to consider those two changes that I just showed you there in an effort to get in keeping with what seems to be going on throughout the Metroplex, and that's a reduction in the use of this type of temporary signage. Any questions?
Mayor, I move to approve.
Motion to approve with a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have one item. We understand that there are some businesses that are off the road significantly, and it's my understanding that the staff is going to look into those businesses. So if you are, just channel your comments to the staff, and there will be, hopefully we'll rectify that. I think that's missing in this ordinance.
Okay. Further discussion? There's a motion and a second on the floor. Will you please vote? Thank you. Item number C is to consider an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, amending Chapter 1 of the Duncanville Code of Ordinances by adding a new Division 3 park and facility, providing for a procedure and the criteria for the naming of parks and facilities, reserving for future use other municipal buildings or lands, providing for a severability clause, providing for a repealing clause, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor, Town Council, or City Council. I will follow in Greg's footsteps and be brief as well. This comes to you before you tonight. Back in the spring, as you recall, the Duncanville Boys Baseball Association wanted to name one of their ball fields after one of their long-term volunteers, and after some research by staff, we discovered that there was no ordinance that dictated how we addressed that request. As you recall, it was also a time-sensitive matter, so we did take it through a process through the park board and eventually to you for your consideration, which you approved. However, we also promised at that meeting that we would come back to you with a park naming ordinance, and that's why we're here tonight. The park naming ordinance will basically codify the park naming procedures and criteria. The procedures that we were proposing are similar to what we did with the DBBI request, and that was it would go before the park board, whereby they would host a public hearing and then submit a written report to the city council, who would make the ultimate decision on the park naming request. And then I'd also note that this would also, for renaming of the parks, it would also follow the same process as the naming request. However, we also include some language that would encourage us to consider the historical names of the parks and really only make those changes should they not follow the city values any longer. And I think a good example of that you see today is a lot of the school districts who are changing the names of a lot of the Confederate named schools. So something similar to that is where we would only recommend that you would change the name of a park. The proposed criteria have 6 different highlighted areas. 2 of them are fairly similar, so I'll talk about those first, and that is the contributions of land or money from an organization or individual, as well as organizations or individuals who provide substantial capital cost or maintenance for a park. Both of those are very similar, but a little bit different. One, you're giving land, and the other, you're actually building upon the land to create the park. We have 2 good examples of that here in Duncanville already with Rotary Park and Lions Park. We have predominant physical characteristics. Again, examples of that would be Lakeside Park or Waterview that we have currently. Honoring community, state, or national leaders, both past and present. And we have many examples of that here in Duncanville already. Honoring local fallen soldiers or public safety personnel. Again, we have an example at Hobden Poe Amphitheater here in Armstrong Park, as well as subdivision names. We used to have a park named after a subdivision, Hollywood Park. However, it has been renamed to Pyburn Park, as you're well aware. A little bit of additional information, as Kevin highlighted in the briefing session earlier, a placeholder has been placed within the ordinance that should the City Council want to consider processes and procedures for the naming or renaming of city facilities not in parks, that has been a placeholder placed within the ordinance, as well as I wanted to remind you that the Park Board did unanimously recommend approval of this ordinance at their June 13th meeting. So with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Councilwoman Thomas?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilman Swartz? Question?
I know in the near future, we're going to be considering a name change for the D.L. Hopkins Junior Senior Building. Is that going to fall under this provision, or do we need to fill in that space we're holding for naming buildings?
It will, but they are proposing to keep the former Mayor Hopkins' name on the building as well. So that will not be changing. It's just changing from the Senior Center to the Adult Activity Center, sorry. So it would still be the Hopkins Adult Activity Center. So we won't be changing, I guess, the key component of that name, and that's keeping the legacy of Mr. Hopkins.
Yeah, I was just curious, since
Yes,
it's
sir.
a building.
Yes, sir. We would follow the same process still, though.
Okay, further questions? Okay, thank you very much. There is a motion and a second on the floor, so at this time, will you please vote? Somebody hadn't voted? There we go. Thank you very much. All right, item number D is to consider amendments to various, appointments to various boards and commissions, including the City Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of Adjustment, Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation Board, Park and Recreation Advisory Board, Library Advisory Board, Sign Control Board, Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board, Duncanville Community Multicultural Commission, Duncanville Social Engagement Partnership, Duncanville Senior Advocacy Commission, Duncanville Sports Legacy Commission, and the Tri-City Animal Shelter Board.
Mayor, I'd
Yes.
like to approve the list that we got out of our workshop with 2 additions. One is to add Helen Peralta on the Multicultural Commission, and to correct the name of Thomas Reyna to Reyna Thomas under the Social Engagement Partnership.
Okay, do we need to read all of those out? I'll ask the City Secretary if she will read those appointments. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay.
Planning and Zoning, Felicia Davis, Bernard Maga, Greg Zilko will all be reappointed. Board of Adjustment, Terry Popham will be moved to regular member as a reappointment. Claudia Zakutny will be reappointed. Marcus Martin will be moved up to alternate 1 as a reappointment. Lily Sales will be reappointed to alternate 2. Craig Lewis will be moved up to alternate 3 as a reappointment, and James Breedlove will be appointed as alternate 4 as a new appointment. Park Board, Alexander McLaughlin will be reappointed. Ed Priest will be reappointed. Library Board, Juan Chapa, reappointed. Joe Hassler, reappointed. Doris Hubbard, reappointed. Jan Knoll, reappointed. 2 new appointments will be Dr. Yolanda Columbus and Quay Roberts. Sign Control Board, reappointments of Sandra Julian and William Scott, and a new appointment of Nathan Warren. Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation, reappointment of Derwin Broughton and Steve Dial, and a new appointment for Dr. Terry Smith. Keep Duncanville Beautiful, reappointments for Bobby Cutler Hill, Barbara McComb, Dottie Pennybaker, Joe Veracruz, Dorothy Wolverton. New appointments including Denish Bethune, Curtis Smith, Sylvia Clark, and Cindy Copeland. Multicultural, reappointments including Linda Lydia and Janet Watson. New appointments including Moises Ruiz, Tawana Brooks, Jeanette Jimenez, Carol Curley Davis, and Helen Peralta. Social Engagement Partnership will be 4 new appointments of Zebulon Williams, Chad Jackson, Raina Thomas, and Patricia Becker. Animal Shelter Board, 2 new appointments, Carol Dunn and Laura Bowers. Senior Advocacy Commission, they didn't have any vacancies. However, with the resolution being approved tonight, increasing it to 9 members, the new members will be Alice Yoder, Robert Ballou, Kenneth Bradford, and Kim Malone. For the sports advocacy, they did not require any new appointments.
Okay, there's a motion and second on the floor. You've heard the names read. Is there any further discussion? Will you please vote? Okay, thank you very much. Item number E has been pulled because this was merely having the council to choose committees that they would like to be the liaison to the committee from the council. And that does not require any type of ordinance or anything like that. So we will sign up. We've got a list, and we're to notify the city secretary as to which boards and commissions that we would like to be a liaison to. And that will be done, and we'll make that list public as soon as we finish with those appointments. Item number F is to consider a resolution of the City Council of the City of Duncanville, Texas, approving and accepting the terms and conditions of an agreement with Dallas County on behalf of the Health and Human Services Department for Mosquito Ground Control Program effective from October 1, 2016 through September 30, 2017 at the rate of $185 per hour, and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute the appointment. Chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Second. And a second. Okay, discussion?
I just have one statement. If you are interested in a detailed discussion that the council had, go back and listen to the briefing because it was quite detailed. And I would encourage you to do that. You can do that on the internet.
Okay. Seeing no further lights, will you please vote? Okay, thank you. Staff and board reports. Item number A is to receive the library quarterly report and work plan update.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Dennis Quinn. I'm the Library Director for the City of Duncanville, and I'm pleased to present a quarterly report to you on library business. I will, per Per usual, we'll start off with discussion of staffing and personnel matters. As has been the trend in my several reports to you, we don't have a lot of turnover in my department, I'm happy to say. So I'll take a moment to commend one of my team members, whose name is Deneen Hudson. She is our youth services librarian. She has been with the city for about 4 years now, and her efforts this summer will factor heavily into the rest of my report. The most significant departmental accomplishment that we've had in the last 3 months that I've spoken with you, since I've spoken with you in May, have been our 2016 Summer Reading Club, which is in a sense the highlight of the library year, where we get lots and lots of additional traffic, and we do a lot of good work, in my opinion, to help students avoid the summer slide so that they don't have a lot of catch-up to do when they come back to school in the fall. We keep them intellectually engaged and pursuing curiosity. We had a reading log contest where participants logged up to 25 hours and redeemed a completed log for a prize packet. We got 817 participants in that this year, which is a 15% increase from last year. And of that, I'd like to note that participants in grades 8 through 12 saw a 50% increase in participation. We're pretty proud of that. That comes up to a total of about 18,650 hours of reading time done by students in our community over the course of the months of June and July. In addition, we had a number of programs and events, totaling about 62 events that were attended by a total of 3,015 people, and it took a team of 19 volunteers contributing 153 hours of their time in addition to staff efforts. So I want to commend Deneen and her crew of volunteers and various other personnel that were involved in putting that together. We had a number of, additional components to our programs this year, one that I'm particularly proud to share with you, which is our Lego Maniacs, that is shown here on this picture. It's essentially an open free play. We open up the program room and provide a bunch of baskets of Legos for kids to come and play and build what they wish for an hour or so. And it saw a lot of interest, as you can tell by the photo. We also added a movie series, a family movie series, involving showings of the Peanuts movie, Like Mike, and Zootopia, and those were also well attended, I'm happy to share. I want to thank the Rec Center for allowing us to use some of their equipment to make that happen. We got to borrow their movie screen and their popcorn machine, which I'm sure added to the interest. On to more serious business, reporting on work plan items. We have completed two of our remaining work plan items for fiscal 15-16, those being the revision of the library policy manual, which was approved in its most recent form by the Library Advisory Board on July 7th. The policy manual as it currently stands is clearer in organization and has revised language to include rationale for the reasoning behind some of the policy decisions in the interest of transparency and accountability. We also, in internal matters, developed a schedule for library staff to engage the public and community groups about library services and to solicit further input. We've heard several comments tonight earlier asking for more opportunities for the public to weigh in and give their opinion and their input on matters related to public services. This would go toward that. One item remains outstanding, and that is to implement top 3 recommendations of Ash plus Lime. This was a consultant study that was conducted, I believe, about a year and a half ago, and the firm came back with some recommendations that we might implement to sort of put some shine on our civic core and address needs and opportunities in the library and the parks departments. Our intent with this, while we have not completed those yet, we're intending to break them out as separate line items in a future edition of the city work plan, again, in the interest of transparency and accountability. I do want to go over some service measures in the interest of statistics. We are on par for what looks like a mostly normal year at this point in the fiscal year, coming close to the end. But I do want to point out a number of measures that we're actually ahead of the game on. While our overall circulation, that is print and electronic, is roughly on par with last year, our digital circulation, those being our ebooks and downloadable audiobooks, is actually 20% up. So we're seeing a rise there. We have actually had a little bit more turnover in our print materials. We've added 15% more new items. That line that says new material is added, 5,327. That's an increase over last year as well. And that's because we're making more efforts to refresh the collection. A lot of areas had been stale, had not seen any new or updated material, so we're making some concerted efforts to make sure that our collection that we're offering in-house is actually relevant and useful for the public. And that's shown in that metric there. While the number of events that we have offered in the last year has not noticeably increased, we have seen an 11% increase in the people who have attended them. So that seems to tell us that we're on the right track. And our adult attendance is up 56%, which also is something that I'm happy to report. Lastly, I'll direct your attention to the last line, volunteer hours. We've made use of 1,470 and some odd hours of volunteer time. That is an 81% increase over last year's to date. And that's due in large part to a fantastic success that we had last October around Halloween that relied very heavily on volunteer efforts. So that got us off to a good start. And since then, we have maintained overages month over year. So that's how we're doing on service measures. And I want to close my presentation out by drawing your attention to some upcoming events that you can look forward to and that the public can look forward to as well in the next few months until my next report to you. We have a blood drive coming up on September 12th with the help of Carter Blood Care. It will take place in the library parking lot, so all are invited. As we often hear, 1 pint of blood can save as many as 3 lives, so we'd like to get as much participation as we can get. We are also reprising our e-waste recycling and paper shredding event under the heading of the Fall Cleanout. This year we're adding some components that will provide an opportunity for members of the public to donate any unwanted or unused but not yet expired food goods and clothing and household items through participation with Goodwill and Duncanville Outreach Ministry. And that will be taking place on Saturday the 17th at 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., again in the library parking lot. And not to leave our friends of the library out, they also, and I'll step back just a moment to mention something that I forgot to mention earlier. The Lego program that I had a photo of, the friends provided the funds that made it possible to offer that. They provided the supplies, so we would not have been able to provide that without their assistance. So let me not be remiss in mentioning the Friends of the Library. They will have their quarterly meeting on October 26th, as per usual, and their guest author for that event will be Catherine Tucker, who more information can be found about her on the library website and on the Friends Facebook page. They will also be having, the Friends that is, they'll also be having their annual author appreciation banquet the first week of November. I do not have a slide for that because some of the details are still yet to be set, but some of the names that have been honored at that banquet in the past have included Jeff Gwynn, Hugh Ainsworth, Irene Sandell, Carlton Stowers, and Jim Donovan, all Texas authors, most of them local, focusing on either Texas history or writing in the fiction genre with a style that embodies the Texas spirit. That's the focus of what the Friends try to honor when they select an author to be honored at that banquet. That customarily happens in the first week of November, and I'll be happy to pass along more details to you and to the public as we draw closer to that date. One more thing I want to mention as a project in development. This was mentioned to you via the city manager, and I wanted to take an opportunity to also share it with the public since we're in the process of developing this. We're also in the process of gathering input from the public. We're aware that a number of members of our community are not able, for various reasons, to get to the library, which is a problem when your library offers services mainly in-house and online. Additionally, we have market data that shows that a certain percentage of the population does not have ready access to the internet, by some estimates as high as 25%. So in the interest of meeting that problem and ensuring that the services that the library provides actually are serving the whole community or as much of it as we can, staff is pursuing the idea of a homebound delivery service that would essentially be it would be application-based. We would have to have a discussion about need, but essentially the idea would be that there'd be a delivery service that would allow those who cannot, for physical or mental or medical reasons, cannot get to the library, would still be able to partake in the collection that we furnish, the services that we provide, and hopefully some internet access as well down the road. So that is, I wanted to take a moment in this meeting to mention that again to you and to the public, and to let everyone know that if you or someone you know might be able to benefit from this service, the library staff would really be interested in talking with you about that. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to address any questions or concerns you might have.
Councilwoman Jameson?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your report. That was very nice. I wonder what you credit the increase in the 8th grade to 12th grade readers.
We've been really interested in that and looking into it as well. We haven't found what looks to us a definitive answer, but I do know that this year, Deneen, our youth services librarian, was able to put a lot more time into outreach in the spring months, like she normally does. She makes a concerted effort to get some face time at all the schools in our district to promote awareness of the stuff that the public library will be offering while the school is out of session. She was able to put some more time and effort into that this spring than she was in 2015, so we suspect that that may have had something to do with it. We can't definitively say that, but we suspect that that may have been one of the pieces.
So she's pushing them.
She's getting the word out, and I would like to think that we're also offering more to that is of interest that they'd even want to come in the first place.
Councilman Harvey?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, I was intrigued by the investigation in the homebound delivery. I don't think I've ever heard a library do that, and I'd be interested in seeing how it works out. It just seems like a unique way of providing services, and I commend you for thinking innovatively.
Thank you, sir. That's been one of our focuses, innovation, that is, in thinking outside the box, as to so to speak. To your point, it would not be a unique service. There are other libraries out there that do offer a service like this, but not very many. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that we came up with the idea. We can't take credit for it, but it did seem to be among the options that we discovered. It did seem to be the option that made the most sense given the nature of our community. Some larger communities who have a larger geographic spread might be inclined to build another branch in an area that's geographically more remote. Some of them look into a mobile branch, which would be a converted bus or van. For a community such as ours that's 11 or 12 square miles and landlocked, there's not an area of this city that's more than 2.5 miles radius away from the building. So we didn't really have a case to lobby for a new branch or something like that. But within existing staffing levels, this seemed like sort of the best combination of factors that we'd be able to support with the staffing and resources that we currently have. So we're looking forward to continuing the conversation, hoping to be able to kick it off at some point in the near future, and hopeful that it'll be as much of a success as we think it will be.
Councilwoman Jameson? Oh, okay. All right. I don't see any further questions, so thank you very much, Dennis, for a
Thank you
great
very
report.
much.
Item number 6B, receive a report regarding the Duncanville Field House.
Mr. Mayor, Kevin, council members, my name's Craig Brassfield. I'm the new general manager at the Field House, and as of May 16th, I took over operations, and tonight is a representation of our efforts for the last 3, or actually 2.5 months. Tonight we'll be discussing several topics. We'll start off with our major events and go through the revenue report, expense report, right down through other items, and end with a conclusion and have questions at that time. This slide here is basically our major events. As you notice, there's 10 major events that we have in this time period. that generate the weekend revenue, if you will. And there's 28 days in this time period that these items were displayed here. The two I would like to draw attention to are obviously the two biggest ones, which is the Gasso and Prime Time, which basically mirrored one another, were our two biggest events. July was a very busy month that we had some 17 days out of the 31 days. Half the time there were the building was pretty much at capacity and had a really good month of July. Slide here represents basically the P&L operations revenue from the last 3 months. I will say that the revenues are down from last year's last 3 months. The thing that I want to make mention of is one thing that's not reflected here that you can't see is the summer camp did not perform as it has in past years. Last year there were some 350 students that went through the program. This year it capped off at 200. I've met with Coach Pearson already to address those concerns of how we get back to the level that we all want. And we've already started concluding this year and started working on next year's ideas to do better. If you'll notice in June, the $52,127, that's the signed lease from Clear Channel that is paid, and each revenue is listed. This slide here is the operations expenses. I'll draw attention to the July labor report. That's a direct correlation of the 17 events that we mentioned, or days that we mentioned in July. I think part of the reason that's a bit higher than the other ones, that was our biggest month, and me being new, I wanted to make sure we had staff around for the two biggest events, being Gasso and Prime Time, and wanted to make sure that those high-profile events went off without a hitch, and I'm glad to say they did. And but there's the reason for a little bit higher labor in that month. No one likes to see red on a situation like this. I know it's not what I want to see, and I certainly know it's not what you guys want to see. But here again, I think this is a direct correlation of 200 kids versus 350 kids over a 60-day period of the same time last year. So we're already taking steps to figure out how that went wrong and improve on that for next year. Some of the things that we've done, the first 2 weeks I was there from May 16th to June 1st, basically I just kind of sat back and watched and tried to figure out how to streamline things and make things better. Some of the things we've done to improve the operations was in the food and beverage operation. We trimmed the menu down, discontinued some things. Another important thing I think is we offer now the soft drinks or fountain, which is a high profit item. And combine that with a meal combo, which is the same thing you would see at any fast food restaurant, which is kind of the way to go. Other items that I want to draw attention to is we increased some of the pricing. Nothing was drastic. It was a slight increase across the board to try to achieve the 45 to 50% optimal profit margin. One thing I'm very proud of as well is we have electronic displays on our menus. So now when you walk up to the concession areas, you see a TV with a nice presentation of exactly what we offer and the price. We installed an ATM machine that has been needed there, and we got that in. And while it's not a big sum of money, but it does pay us a rebate program. Upcoming events, starting this weekend, we've got Cream of the Crop. I guess the biggest event on the board there is the one in September. It's a new event, USA National Floorball Tournament. It was not present last year. The other items on the list there from October on down were events that have been with us in the past, and trying to develop relationships with all the individuals across the board. We were able to keep all the events scheduled, and we're already starting to plan for next year very aggressively and have pretty much everything scheduled to come back again next year. But these are the events that are coming up for the field house through December. This slide here represents some things, and I'm really proud of a couple of things here. Our after-school program has pretty much been standard at the field house in past, but there's some twist on it this year that haven't been done. We met with Mr. Merchant at the Duncanville ISD, and we're very close to reaching an agreement to make the field house a bus stop location. So now students will be dropped off at the field house as part of a regular bus stop. Will give us a much better opportunity to increase those numbers and have a much more lucrative after-school program. And another thing that's right there is the Beacon Hill Preparatory Institute. We have a couple of representatives here tonight. I want to thank you guys, Shanella and Cynthia, for being here. Their idea, they brought it to me, it was to make the field house a much more academic, not only athletics, but an academic destination. And one thing that's going to be different about our tutoring program, or excuse me, our after-school program, there will be licensed tutors, teachers that will be there. It won't be just a babysitting opportunity. It will be actual tutoring going on. And if it's okay, I'd like to ask Cynthia or one of you guys if you'd like to address kind of what we're doing here, and very proud of it. And so this is Shanella and Cynthia.
Wasn't expecting to come before the board tonight, but thank you, Mr. Brasfield. My name is Charnola Derry, and I am president and co-founder of Beacon Hill Preparatory Institute. And with me tonight is Cynthia Nevels, who is the project manager. Just want to thank you guys for allowing us to come before you to say thank you personally and put a face with the program. We did come to the Duncanville Field House realizing that there was a need to merge academics and athletics, making sure that our scholars were performing on the court as well as off the court. Beacon Hill is an accelerated math and reading program that has been performing for the last 10 years in the Dallas area on an in-school capacity as well as after school. And so we provide math and reading tutoring, SAT prep, college prep, parent workshops, and enrichments as well to students who are the age of 4 all the way through 12th grade. Our motto is success begins with preparation. And so we have to prepare today where we want our students to be tomorrow. So we're excited about teaming with the Duncanville Field House, athletics and academics, making it a one-stop shop. And we're just as excited to come back with Mr. Brasfield and report those results to you.
Coming down the list, we get back to the athletic side of the equation. We have the men's basketball league that's been very successful in the past. Top Gun, all the ones are coming back. I would point out that the Essence Dance Company is a new one. It's just starting on September 6th, so there's another a new tenant we have at the field house, and we're looking for big things. Their schedule is completely full in the dance studio upstairs. Field house facility proposed upgrades. Obviously the new flooring is a hot topic. I'm sure you guys know all the ins and outs of what's going on there. It's in the budget, and hopefully we're able to get that going. I think it's very important with all the new facilities being built around the community that the field house stays up to grade with the new field facilities that are being built. So hopefully that will put us in the same light. Interior gym painting and logos and websites is something that I'm working with Jessica James on, with a hotel occupancy tax that will hopefully get those 3 items completed prior to the gym floor going in, but it's a working process, and we'll see, hopefully we can get that done. In conclusion, In my first 3 months there, really what I tried to do was contact everyone and introduce myself and involve our clients for a professional relationship, identify new ones. Something we got to do is work on our labor cost. As we talked earlier, there's definitely some room for improvement there, as well as tightening up the food and beverage operation with trying to buy for less and sell for more and create a better profit margin. We'll be initiating sponsorship sales, something I'm very used to and aware of in my past endeavors, and feel confident that the field house is a tremendous opportunity for the businesses of this community to get involved and create more revenue for the venue. And we'll be putting an outline plan together that will be a brochure and our business plan that will be presented at the council meeting in October. Excuse me. Yes, in October 2016. With that, would do my best to try to answer any questions.
Councilwoman Jameson?
This is probably more to the city manager. I noticed, and maybe the attorney knows, what our agreement is with Clear Channel on renting that billboard. I don't know if you noticed, but there is an ad up there for Cedar Hill Rec Center that goes up there right over the field house, which I thought was a little.
I don't know what the agreement is, but I'm gonna bet that it does not pertain to any control over the content of what's on that sign.
Do you
So that's
know,
something
have you
we can
read
look
it,
at.
Bob?
No,
It doesn't.
Maybe we should think about that before we. Yeah.
I'll look at it for you and I'll give a report back to you.
Yeah. Because we got another field house opening, and the last thing we'd like is to have them advertising over our field house.
Yes, ma'am.
And
let us advertise at theirs.
yeah, right. I'm sure they would. And the other thing I was going to ask you, on one of your screens you had on September, Frisco basketball in September. What is that?
Forney.
Oh, Forney. Never mind.
Forney's demise is our gain. It looks like we were contacted by the general manager of that building. They're closing that building coming up in late August, and we're working with them to get several of their events that will come to our venue.
I didn't even know Forney had one.
It's a different deal. It's in the private sector, and they have a 26-team men's basketball league. Our biggest challenge is going to be having space on Sunday evenings when they want to play their games. Is one of our busiest times, but where there's a will, there's a way.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much.
Well, I thank you guys for the opportunity that's been bestowed on me, and we're going to hunker down and get things done at the field house. Thank you.
This completes all of our agenda items, so we stand adjourned at 9:30.